No, it's completely true, and I think we're onto something here, though.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't feel like a community.
No, not at all.
It doesn't feel like a community at all, because it was like that. I remember that too. So it wasn't in Killeen, because I lived on the Harker side, and so it was kind of the same thing that we're talking about now. Nobody really talked to each other. However, though, when I lived in Aberdeen, Maryland, I lived on Post. I knew everybody that lived on my street.
Yeah.
Not once did you ever feel unsafe.
Right.
And every single race and culture lived on my street. We had a Jamaican family next to us. We had 3 black families down the street. Right across the street was a Korean lady. And then we had some white people over here. And I think we had 1 Hispanic family as well. And everybody knew everybody. Right. Everybody got along. Everybody's kids played. We all played football. Yeah. We used to race down the street. We used to ride bikes together. Everybody rode the bikes to the PX. Nobody was scared of anything because everybody knew everybody. And it wasn't one of those things like we were like a second ago, we were using the example of locking your doors. If you knew the names of all your neighbors, you probably wouldn't lock your doors. Like you probably wouldn't feel the need. You wouldn't feel the need to lock the doors because 2 things happen. If you get robbed, well, guess what? You know everybody's names on the fucking street. Okay, Bob lives here. Jill lives here. X, Y, and Z. You can tell. You can just figure out who. You can at least give someone the information in order for them to figure it out. Right. Or B, you can trust everybody.
Yeah.
Like you would just be like, oh, nah. Bob's not going to come over here and do that. Or Deante over here is not going to come in here and do that. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, I don't have to worry about nothing.
Too. Bob and Jill are going to look out for you, you know?
Yeah, that too.
I do have a decent neighbor in my current neighborhood right now. We're here in Austin, Texas today, but my mother-in-law stayed home. She came down and stayed in Florida. Okay. My neighbor called me and was like, hey, I know you guys are going to Texas today. Are you guys good to go? And I was like, oh, that's my mother-in-law. Thanks for checking out because he saw the bathroom light. So I was like, they're remnants of it, but it's not widespread.
It's not widespread. It's not something that's super common. But like you said, like Jeffrey said, he's a little bit more old school, and that's how he does it. So there's always going to be like those one-offs that are going to do it still. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it's just not a normal thing. I don't even know how you bring that back, because we were already getting antisocial in the sense of like face-to-face communications. Which is why I'm so glad that people still come in here and do this face-to-face, and that we've only done 1 virtual, and that's because she was a mom, 50-hour-minute drive. She just couldn't be out here at this time of night and make it home to the kid. So far, we've only done 1 virtual, and that means a lot, because sitting here and having the conversation is completely different.
Oh, it's great.
Even just talking on the cell phone, it's completely different. You can read the body language. You can understand that if you said something that the person disagrees with, whether they're vocal or not about it, it's usually pretty noticeable. Right. Where you can't do that where you talk to somebody over text. And I think that's where a lot of this fucking anxiety problems are coming from. Because everyone is like, how come you didn't put an exclamation point?
There's no
how come
context.
It's just a period?
Nothing's in context.
Yeah.
How come you can't tell someone's tone and body language from a text, and I could be joking or I could be talking shit, but you may read it 2 totally different ways. Yeah. And I think social media has an issue with that. You get on Twitter, you get on Facebook, you don't know how to interact with people or how people are actually interacting with you. So I think people go straight into defensive mode. And that's when you have a lack of agreement, and people are going to fight and argue and pick sides and figure out who is in opposition of who, and then you go from there. It goes back to tribal mentality, and it's crazy how we live in this technology, like this age of technology, and we go to this age of tribalism at the same time. Yeah,
it's interesting, right? As we progress in technology, it almost seems as a society as we regress.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's very fair to say.
It's odd, like it's. And even more to your point, like it's not even so much defense mode. It's this something in your brain that's telling you, nah, it's just negative. Like if you're already not an overly confident person, which I would say 99% of people don't have this like confidence. Like they're just 100% of the time, they never think like negatively about themselves. Right. So anytime you get like that so-called dry text message, you're like, fuck, what did I do? Immediately, you're just like, what did I do?
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah, and it's like at the same... And then on the flip side, that person who sent the text is probably just saying, nah, thank you, that's cool.
Yeah, and that's it. In the conversation, it's all it needs to be.
Yeah, like it didn't have to be that much, right? Mm-hmm. Like yesterday, Jeffrey texted me, and he was like, did you need the code for the package? And I just sent back, nah, I got it. And then I thought about it later on. I was sitting on the couch, and I thought about it later on. I was like, damn, that was kind of dry as fuck. But at the same time, it didn't need any more response than that. It was like, no, I went and got it.
Right.
But when you just read the text message the way that I put it, you could be like, oh, well, damn, dude, I was just trying to give you the code.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it could have been interpreted so many different ways. And so I don't know, I think about that kind of stuff a lot. And I think the biggest impact that it's affected, not only like sense of community and like talking to your neighbors and doing things like that, but relationships. Mm-hmm. Like trying to date somebody, trying to talk to somebody. There's just so much like anxiety that is involved at this point because almost all communication is texting.
Yeah, it's all texting. Well, and that's why, I mean, I'm not dating anymore. I'm married. But when I was dating, I really wanted to FaceTime someone.
Sure.
Because you can't get to know anyone through text. No. You know, it's dry. You don't have their attention, rather. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'd rather FaceTime you. And if I can get to FaceTime you and then we get on a regimen where we FaceTime each other regularly, that's how I know I can build a relationship with you. Because I know that we can have, even if we can't face-to-face, we can have face-to-face with our undivided attention. We can learn more because there's a lot I have to say. A lot of time, right?
Sure.
I don't have time to text it. Because if I have to text a paragraph, I'm not going to want to text you in the moment because I try to prioritize things in life. And if it's this long and if I can't call you, then we miss out on something. Yeah. And then maybe somebody else may give you the opportunity to FaceTime or talk on the phone and things like that so you can expand on things. So, man, dating these days, I know it's scary.
It's tough.
It's tough because there's so much things. You talk about context. You got to make sure... Again, we are extremely polarized. You got to make sure you don't say the right or wrong thing too early, too soon, and you have to fill this person out. It's tough.
It is.
It is.
It's tough. Before we go any further, man, introduce yourself. So we started, by the way.
Yeah, I caught that. But yeah, so I'm Deante Covington. Grew up in Killeen, Fort Hood area, so that's home. Been there since 2001, actually. So that's been home forever. Oh, yeah. I went to Killeen High School. So yeah, Killeen is all my formative years are in Killeen. And I attribute a lot of my life to Killeen. You know, a lot of experiences. See a lot of, directions that people go. It's like a lot of crossroads going on. Yeah. Because you could take one route, you could take another route, and everything can be so different. And I think a lot of our friend groups, we're almost 30 soon. And I think a lot of our friends are successful. You know what I'm saying? A lot of friends are successful through multiple means.
Absolutely.
Killeen is very weird. Very weird place because...
There's so many different walks of life.
It is.
So many different walks of life. Yeah. And there's so many people... Like, we talked about this on the phone when we discussed what day we were going to do this. We talked about this on the phone. It's like, the dopest people in my life came from Killeen.
Yeah. Facts.
100%. The dopest people in my life. The people who I still talk to... So, I moved around, being a military brat. I moved around all the time. Lived in 6 different states. I barely talked to anybody from any other... And granted, I was younger, so it's a little bit different. However, though, all the people that I still keep up with are people that I went to high school in Killeen. Yeah. Those are the people I still talk to.
I mean, look at Facebook and Twitter. Like, the main people we interact with are our
Killeen
friends.
Yep.
It's so crazy how it draws you in. And I love it. I love it. And then, so yeah, Killeen was great. Tried to play basketball. I was okay. I wasn't as great as I wanted to be.
The Mr. had the fuck, man. I forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh, you're good, man. You're good. So Killeen was good. Played basketball. Thought I was gonna go to college and do X, Y, and Z things, but ended up getting this random call, April of 2011. And it was a recruiter for me to join the Air Force, and I was like, I don't even know you got my number. I never answer random numbers. But I was like, this is weird. Let me answer it. And I talked to him, and he mentioned some things, typical recruiter stuff, and I was like, I'll check it out. So I came in that Monday, and I don't know, I was just sold from that point because I think the weekend before, I went to UNT. I was accepted to go to the University of North Texas, and I was going to go. I was like, that was the plan. I was going to do kinesiology. I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do. But
fair enough.
I looked at the numbers. The math didn't add up. My mom just got a new job. My dad was already working, so I didn't think I was going to get the scholarships and the financial aid that I wanted. And then I have this recruiter in my ear. He's telling me, you can get this GI Bill. You can do this, this, and that. You can have all these benefits. They sell you a dream. But it got to me, and I was like, hey, I can do 4 years, make 80 grand. You don't make shit when you're young in the Air Force or in the military in general. But you make 80 grand and also have this 80 grand GI Bill, and I'll be set to start whatever my next path is. So I started getting into that, and then I ended up enlisting. I signed the paper when I was 17. I graduated when I was 17, and then went to basic training, and the rest is history. And here I am about 10 years later I love it.
Killing it.
I love it.
I love it, dude. I love it, man. I'm so proud of you too. And you just keep crushing it. You just keep. Man. You're the perfect example of someone who just continues to take forward steps.
Right.
Always. You started off 17, going in as an enlisted. You did your time. You finished, got your master's degree, and then now you're a second lieutenant still.
I'll be first lieutenant in July. So
ooh, okay,
almost there.
Hey,
yeah.
So about to get promoted to first lieutenant. You got married. You have a kid. Mm-hmm. Driving a Tesla. Subtle flex.
Yeah, some flight, but it's all worth it. It's all due to hard work, man. Like I've always been the one to set goals for myself. And even when I signed that paper, I was like, I'm gonna get my education at least. I ended up being really good at my job. Got my education. I was like, okay, I did this, but there's a path for me to do more. So I went and got my master's degree. I went and commissioned. So again, I always want to do more. So every year I write down what I want to do for this year. And I try to achieve them as much as I can because honestly, when I did finish my master's degree, there was like a void. I wanted to finish so that way I can have more time for my wife, more time for my family and things of that nature. But it's like, I'm that type of person that needs to go. I need to be on 10 all the time.
Yeah.
So I try to figure out what's next. You know what I mean? And right now, I think I'm in the process of figuring out what's next because I think I want to fulfill whatever my ceiling is. I want to get there and I want to reach it and I want to break it, So whatever that ceiling is, I want to continue to move on. So whether that's me achieving, getting a PhD or making 06, making a career out of this, becoming a politician after all of this, I want to see what's next. That way I keep going. So that's what motivates me.
I love it.
I don't get too stagnant. I try not to.
You can't get stagnant. The second you get stagnant, you get complacent, you get stuck.
Yep.
And once you get stuck, it's so hard to get the wheels going again.
Exactly.
Because when the wheels come to a complete stop, it takes a lot of mental fortitude to get them to go again. And a lot of people just don't have the mental capacity in order to restart the wheels. Everybody has the ability when the wheels are completely flowing and everything's going. Everyone has the ability to keep it going.
Groove, yeah.
But the second you stop, the second you get lazy, the second you get off task, the second you start to be like, nah, you know what, I can take today off. Nah, I'll take tomorrow off.
Right.
The second those wheels come to a complete halt, that's when you get in trouble.
Yep.
It's really hard. It happens with anything. Health, career.
Career, yeah.
Because, it's so easy to sit on the couch and eat food. So easy.
And
everybody enjoys it. Yes,
yeah.
Everybody enjoys it.
Right.
Everybody enjoys it. There's no one who's gonna sit here and be like, "No, man, I don't want to sit on the couch and eat pizza." Like, no, that's not a real thing. Everybody wants to. You just can't always do that. Like, that's not something that you can do in order to keep those wheels moving. And I want to back up just a little bit too.
Yeah.
So you get this call from the recruiter. You don't normally answer phone calls. That's pretty cool because I'm someone who definitely believes in something, believes in the saying, everything happens for a reason.
Right.
So it's cool that you answer this phone call. What compels you? So you said you were sold, when you walked in that day. What was it that just compelled you? Was it something inside you that was just like, nah, this is what I'm going to do? Like, was it that, or was there something else, like some other driving force that convinced you?
I don't know. So I think... Honestly, I think the driving force might be my parents, honestly. They were both in the military as well. My dad was in the Army. He did 13 years. My mother was in the Navy. Again, I never had intention of joining the military. But my dad always is like, do this, do that. Because he's seen it. I mean, this is an avenue to get your life started and to have your benefits and move forward with your life. And I think that was part of the driving force. And again, like you said, I think it was just fate. I answered that phone call and I went to the recruiter's office and I'm reading these pamphlets. And again, it all could have went sideways. I could have got the wrong job. Anything could have went different. But everything just opened my eyes. And I was like, what makes sense? Do I really want to go to college as a 17 or 18-year-old with no real goal but to go to college because that's what society told me to do? I would have went there for the wrong reasons. Yep. I wouldn't have been set up the way I would have been. I don't know where I'd be at if I went to college, did 4 years, got a kinesiology degree. Do I get my master's? Do I become a physical therapist? Sounds good. You'd be sitting here trying to start a podcast. That's where you would be right now, bro. Because that's the other segued right into my next point, is exactly what you just said. I think we have to get away from this whole, you got to go to college right after high school. Oh, my gosh, yeah. Dude, because you don't know what the fuck you want to do. As an 18, not a chance you know what you want to do. When I was 19 and I was setting up for community college using my tuition assistance, They're saying, hey, choose a major now. Choose a major now.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to take gen ed. I knew I wanted to get math, science, and English out the way. They're saying, pick this major now. Start taking these courses now. It's like, no.
Why can't I just get my associate's degree?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Mr. or Miss Advisor. Like, why are you trying to force you down this lane? Because you can't expect an 18-year-old to know what they want to do for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
It is a problem. It is a major problem. Because then they rack up this student debt, and then here they are, 4 years later, screaming, cancel the debt. And like, okay, I understand what you're saying. I also understand the fact that you signed on the dotted line. You chose to do it. Yeah. But then I also understand the middle issue of it. The whole thing is that we push these kids. We push people straight out of high school that college is the only way. Mm-hmm. So half the issue is, people don't want to own up to the fact that they signed the paper. The other issue is that they signed the paper. And then the biggest issue is that they felt like it was the only choice.
Yeah. And I think we got to get down to the basics, right? Why did they push college? Because it worked for the generation before us to get jobs and move forward in life. I think we need to go back to the basics why do we go to school? To get a job. And that's what makes everything go around. You get a job, you make money, you prosper for your family, and you move forward. So I think we need to go back to what are the jobs in this country that are never going to go away and that are going to be more beneficial to people growing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you need to take a break from college. If you're high school teacher saying college, well, let's also look at trade schools. Let's look at these things. I think the pandemic has opened our eyes to a lot of things. Yep. There are some jobs that are even pandemic proof. And if you go to college, look into being a healthcare worker. Look into being something in national security, whether it's cybersecurity. There's so many avenues when it comes to security. Yep. You'll never, any nation, no matter what nation it is, will always have national security as a forefront. For sure. No matter what. No matter, you can pick any country. National security is their number one goal. What else? I mean, hell, even Walmart, those are essential jobs, but you got to do it the right way.
Because, and that's a perfect example because Reggie right now, been working at Costco 3 years? Mm-hmm. 3 years, and he's already up to $23 an hour.
Yeah. You got to find out what works for you. Even if you are doing the non-traditional route and working at a big blue business like Walmart, Costco, Sam's Club, whatever the case may be, if you have a goal and your goal is not to be stagnant, and if this job has the ability for you to move up, make that your goal and crush it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And again, college isn't always the best because we have a lot of peers. Again, we're almost 30. We have a lot of peers. We see what's worked and what hasn't worked. Going to school and getting a psychology degree and not going further with that business or with that degree doesn't really help you because then you become a Starbucks barista or whatever the case may be. And I think we go there because it's safe. I'm going to get a degree. I'm not super big into STEM. I'm not big into science or math or engineering or anything like that. So I'm going to do psychology because it's the middle of the road degree plan. Now I got this piece of paper. It doesn't mean anything. I spent $80,000. I'm in debt. Now I have to get this entry-level job and it doesn't work. So I think we need to restructure what's important when it comes to education, STEM, trade schools. There needs to be a lot more emphasis in trade.
Absolutely, because
a lot more. That's what keeps the world running.
Electricians, plumbers, and there's no shame in any of those jobs either.
No, there shouldn't
be.
There shouldn't be.
They make great money.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
Just have the mic right in front of your mouth.
Okay.
Just a little bit closer.
It just needs to be kind of like how his is in front of him, kind of.
Okay.
So you can keep it out of the way so we can still see each other. But as long as it's pointing at you, better.
Good.
Cool.
Good. But trade jobs where it's at, being a plumber, and all those jobs shouldn't be looked down upon because you are forever going to be in need. They're always going to need someone to fix their plumbing, their toilet, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. You own a business, that's the way to do it. You know what I'm saying? So we need to revamp the way we look at how children develop into adults. Big time.
I agree. I mean, and I think we touched on some great things so far already. We already talked about I'm still really I've never even thought about that till today. I never even thought about the whole saying hi to your neighbors and getting their name, and I never even thought about that whole concept until today as we brought that up today. Mm-hmm. I'm still thinking about that. It's a super interesting concept because I'm curious on that. When did that stop? Because I feel like that was halfway through our lives.
I feel like in our formative years, that's how our neighborhoods were like.
Yeah, and then it kind of just it has stopped. And like I said, I have a little bit of a advantage because going to the dog park, you meet people there naturally. But even then, sometimes it's weird because you'll go to the dog park and it'll just be you and one other person in there, and they won't say a word.
Right.
They won't say a word.
No one
and
wants
I'm
to
like,
be awkward. No one.
It's so weird.
Yeah, I get
but
it.
isn't it more awkward to not say anything?
Because again, you don't want people to think that one, you're being weirdo.
Yeah.
And if it's a male-female interaction, you don't want them to think that you're coming on to them. It's like, hey, I just want friendly interaction.
Yeah,
I want human interaction.
I'm at the dog park. You're at the dog park at the same time. Shouldn't we just have a conversation right now? Like, that seems pretty normal.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, this.
And I think maybe it's a generational thing, and maybe it's a millennial. It's a fault to the millennials, whereas we're super into our phones and social media. Like, we're extremely social.
We are,
not in real life.
Not in real life.
Not in real life. We can be on Twitter literally all day. Then I get out in public and I don't nod, say hi to anyone in real life. Yeah. And I think that's what it is. I think we're extremely social, but we're introverted. At least a lot of us are.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I almost feel like the introvertedness is created, not necessarily. It's not necessarily that all of a sudden we evolved into more introverted people. I just think that it has, with the growth of technology and the growth of social media, it has created this more introverted. Like, it's more acceptable to be introverted almost. And it's not even that it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just, I don't know. It's just like, why not? Right. Why not go meet your neighbors?
Right. And I hope things change. And I doubt it will. But I think with the pandemic, I feel like people have had a yearning to be social with humans and having human interaction. So the pandemic can do two things to us.
Can make it worse or make it better?
Make it worse or better. Because maybe you're yearning for social interaction and now you're going to be more outgoing. Or this is what you've always wanted. You always wanted your distance. You always wanted your space. And people are going to expect that for the rest of their lives. Yeah. So we can go in two directions. I think I'm going to lean more towards the outgoing part. Because I've always been outgoing. Sure. And I remember, this is pre-pandemic, but I remember like just going to the mall just to be around people and see people. When I was in college, I wouldn't study in my room. I'd go to Starbucks just so people can be around me because I like people. And I really do hope we are a lot more social in the future.
I think people are fascinating in good and bad ways. Yeah. I also think, like we were talking about this at dinner, we were talking about how it seems like everything's extremely so polarizing, and I just feel like it's aspirated by the media, aspirated by social media, because when we have the discussions that we have, we're almost always close aligned. Like, we don't really vary that far off. There might be a thing within that path that we might not fully agree on completely, but that's okay. And also, at the end goal is often the same. I
think so. I think a lot of us are more middle than it seems. Yeah. But the loudest voice is always the most polarizing. We talked about that at dinner. So I think when you're on Twitter, Facebook, or whatever social medium you're on, you see the loudest voices first, because I think a lot of people tend to have groupthink. So this loud voice says something that you may believe in, but it's very polarizing. You're going to like and retweet it, and it's going to get these likes and retweets. And something on the other side of the spectrum. So then you think, this is how everybody thinks, so I have to choose a side because I don't want to look like the other way. And I think social anxiety ties into it too. Because no one wants to look like the other side.
Yeah, and nobody wants to look like the other side. That's definitely a big thing too. And nobody also wants to feel left out. Yeah. Unless you're comfortable with yourself. Unless you're comfortable with your moral compass. Like, I live perfectly fine in the middle. Like, it doesn't bother me. Right. Like, it doesn't like that. It doesn't make me feel like I'm like, I don't need to feel like I'm a part of those groups. Like, I don't need that feeling. I just look at everything pretty objectively, and I'll side one way with a certain issue, and I'll side another way with a different issue. Right. And I'm comfortable with being in the middle, but I don't think everybody's comfortable enough with themselves or take it upon themselves to think for themselves. Right. And I think that goes for both ways. I think there's a lot of people that just start to follow certain things blindly. And I think that's an issue too, is that people just follow things blindly. They either don't read up on it, or they don't do their due diligence to listen to the other side, or they hear something and like, yep, that's it. And it can't be anything else.
Yep. And that's an issue too. And I think we talked about humans are fascinating, right?
They are.
Even if you are on the way opposite of the spectrum than I am when it comes to politics. I actually want to know why you think that way, and I also want to have a conversation with you, because if I have inclination that you are one of those people that might be on social media and you're just a troll, I actually want to have a face-to-face conversation and see, why do you think this way? Let's get to business. Let's cut the theatrics, and let's talk about it, because I think that interaction can bring people to a better understanding of each and other side. I think some people are irrational and you can never get through to them. But I do want to know why people on the furthest of the left think one way, and I want to know why people on the furthest of the right think a certain way, because it helps you understand and it helps you approach those people better when you're not in a social space and you can actually try to have a conversation with them. So yeah, I always enjoy that interaction no matter what, because I think you get to understand.
I agree. That's exactly why I do this. It's so much fun, because I just don't think that we're as bad as people make it out to be. Like I said, most of the time I have conversations with people just like this. Oftentimes we're heading towards the end goal. We might stray from a different path along the way from here and there for X, Y, and Z. However, we all want the same kind of end goal. We just want people to be nicer to each other. We want people to be more open to each other, be more accepting of each other, to treat people as individuals, stop lumping groups together.
I think everyone wants to be prosperous.
We just
no one wants to live in fear. It's like a lot of those things. Like we all have the same goals. It's just different things in the way that should be dealt with, and like whether it's politically or conversationally. But they're not. Like nowadays, it seems like they're stopping points. It's like, oh, you believe in this? Well, I don't believe in that, so we got to go our separate ways.
Yeah.
And that's not it. And I think that ties into council culture and a lot of different things. And I think we can't progress as a society that way. We really can't.
No. And I think what we're seeing now, though, is cancel culture, and that culture now is really starting to cannibalize itself.
Yeah.
And in a way, that turns into be a good thing. Because when someone who's very heavily into canceling somebody who's in that culture, and then something happens to them in which now they find themselves on the outside of that mob, if that happens to enough people in that mob, then suddenly you realize, oh, they don't give a fuck about me.
Yeah. And it's not
They never cared about me. And it's not real.
If you have power, you can never... I got to caveat this.
Maybe not never. But
there's a lot of things when it comes to cancel culture in the first place. I think the entire metoo movement has cancel culture all kinds of jacked up. For example, so the metoo movement happened. So we're looking at these executives that are being perverts and predators towards women, using their power or using any other means to obtain what they want in women. That's completely illegal. Got to get those dudes the fuck out.
Sure.
And I think that's important.
Yep.
But that's not cancel culture.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen that happen to people. We've seen people we don't like. We've seen people that were doing bad things get the hell out of here. And I think people want to use that same framework for every single thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, if that person not doing anything illegal, I think we have the freedom of speech to say whatever we want. There isn't a freedom of consequence, and I understand that. But there has to be a certain point where, like, hey, that person's not doing anything illegal. Let's not try to have this cancel culture mob on Twitter for 2 days. And then 3 days later, this person drops an album, releases some merchandise, or whatever the case may be, and we all forgot about it. That's the issue with cancel culture. It's super short-sighted.
Yep.
And it doesn't really mean anything. I mean, Kanye West, and I've even attested to canceling him. You know what I mean? You can't cancel him. You can't cancel someone that is that influential. You know what I mean?
You can't.
I mean, the most recent president, I think a lot of us try to get him canceled. You can't cancel someone that has power.
Yeah.
Real power.
Yeah.
Unless they're doing something actually illegal.
They came at Elon Musk. You can't cancel Elon Musk.
You can't.
This dude...
You can't.
This dude is revolutionizing things. I mean, he's creating too much. You can't cancel him.
Yeah, unless he's doing something illegal.
Yeah, unless he does something terribly wrong. Yeah.
And I think that's the line. But it's like and I think the biggest point we've seen in cancel culture recently is like tweets.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all said stupid stuff in our past.
Sure.
I think we all should sanitize our Twitter as we get older and become more mature. Find those keywords, delete them. You know what I mean? Get rid of that history.
Sure.
But I also don't think that we should be reaching back in history. I think some things people have said have been ignorant in the past, but I also think that some things have been said within the context of that era.
That era, yeah, that's a big thing too, in context of that time frame.
Yeah, and then I know you talked about the phrase "slippery slope," which I gotta find another phrase.
I know.
This is a slippery slope because, like, for example, I think the new generation, what do they call it, Gen Zers, are trying to cancel Eminem based off his lyrics. Says like, if you guys do enough deep diving, you're gonna get mad at a lot of rap music, a lot of other media because of what people were saying in 1999.
Yeah.
Things have changed.
Yeah.
Culture has changed. Maybe for the better. But again, you can't reach back and counsel people that have dealt with the issue in that time.
Sure, because in the 90s, you were bumping that shit.
Yeah, everyone was. Everyone
yeah.
was. There's a lot of things that's changed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think the slurs that people used to say, the words that people used to say, and I'm not just talking about the N-word or anything like that, but all the other slurs were, I hate to say they're acceptable because it makes you cringe these days, but that's just the world that we lived in. Mm-hmm. And just because, for example, Eminem might have said the F word about people doesn't mean he thinks that way today.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I think that we can't reach back. Unless he's saying those things today, then you got to revisit it. But you can't go look back at a rap song or a Saturday Night Live skit or comedy and reach back. I don't even know where comedy is anymore. I couldn't be a comedian today because I would be extremely nervous.
I think they're one of the few people. They're one of the few groups left that are untouchable still. Like, they tried coming for Dave Chappelle.
Well, yeah.
That shit didn't happen.
I don't even know who they are because I think Dave Chappelle is known to be extremely edgy. And that's a good point. I think...
Oh, when Sticks and Stones came out, dude, people were pissed. They literally tried to blackball it. Yeah. They gave it a 1% on Rotten Tomatoes, hoping nobody would watch it. Like, the critics gave it a 1%, hoping nobody would watch it.
Right.
People were so pissed off by it.
Right.
And then it got a 99% audience rating.
Of course.
Because you can't, like, people crave that stuff. Like, think about, here's a perfect example. Invincible, The Boys, all those kinds of shows.
People want to see edgy stuff.
We were craving it at this point because now everything's so censored and everything's so muted and everyone's lacking character and lacking, like, their... just being themselves. Like, everyone's, like you said earlier, like with dating, everyone's scared to say something wrong too early.
Yeah.
And it's like, bro, just be you. Like, why can't everyone...
I will say, though, Dave Chappelle, for example, is established. It would take some big balls to go up there and try to do stand-up like Dave Chappelle as a nobody.
True.
So I think it comes to power and being established as well.
True.
And I think being an up-and-coming comedian that's not just on IG, I think it's hard. I think it's actually hard.
Maybe. Yeah. I think there's definitely some topics that probably, well, I don't know, man. I don't know, because the comedy scene is growing. Comedy is getting bigger. It's not getting smaller. Yeah.
That's interesting. Maybe I'm ignorant because I feel like it's maybe contracting.
Yeah,
I don't see much of it anymore.
That's one thing, right? It's like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. Right. But the community is getting bigger. Like, there's more and more comedians. I mean, there's just here in Austin, I think 6 new comedy clubs have opened.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Okay.
So, like, the community's growing. Like, I don't think it's going away. I think it's actually getting bigger because I think people are finding out. I think it's just like anything. I think it's like podcasts, YouTubers, Twitch streamers. I think comedy is just another form of those things that people are like, hey, maybe I'll go try that out.
Right.
Or maybe, no, I want to do that now. Like, screw college. I want to go do that.
I want people to enjoy me. I want to, bring excitement. I get it.
I think those I think it's like all of those things. Like, I think everyone's just like, fuck, man, maybe I can do it.
Right.
And then they go and try it. And then maybe they stick with it or they don't stick with it. I think comedy is kind of that same fashion. Like, that same thing. I think that group is getting bigger and bigger. And I think we're seeing a lot of up-and-coming comedians in general. But yeah, it's just... I don't know, society, it's a weird and fascinating time to talk to live because we have endless things to talk about. Right. There's never nothing to talk about.
Content forever in a day.
Ever, yeah. which also makes the antisocialness of in-person interaction even more weird because there's almost never nothing to talk about. There's always something to talk about.
For sure.
Because everyone probably saw that video. Everyone probably saw that meme.
Yeah.
Everyone's probably seen X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, because what viral means today is not what it meant 10 years ago. Like, if you said something was viral 10 years ago, there's still a large... Like, for example, Tosh.0, when that was big 10 years ago, I've never seen any of those clips.
Yeah.
Now it's like, if they were to do Tosh.0 today and on a weekly basis, I'd like seen that 2 weeks ago on Twitter. You know what I mean? Like, viral is literally...
Oh, viral is like...
the population have seen
a good portion.
I mean, I get to work and I'm listening to 50-year-olds talk about memes and stuff like this. I'm like, what? They might be on the tail end of it. You know what I mean? They might have caught it 2 weeks later. But it's like everyone gets touched by whatever the viral moment is of the week. So, yeah, there's always something to talk about.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there is. There's always something to talk about. And, man, I want to go. Okay, so where were? Oh yeah, so in your story, we got off on a big tangent. So we met in high school. That's how we know each other.
Yeah.
And since then, dude, I've seen you grow, man. It's awesome. Yeah, I love watching it. You continue to stay active with your fitness.
That's another thing too. Fitness has been big.
Yeah.
Because I've always thought I was athletic. I played basketball. I was tall, lanky. I could run. I could jump. I could dunk. All that stuff. But it's like, once I actually started to test myself physically, running a lot, and I never knew I was a good runner until I started the military thing, and then I started running, and I was like, this is easy, and I'm actually pretty good at it. So I started running marathons and half marathons, stuff like that, and like those type of events also fuel me. You know what I mean? It's like I have a goal, I train for this, and then I win it. Right?
There's something so powerful about that.
Yeah.
Like, how'd you feel when you finished your half marathon?
When I finished my first one, it felt so great.
Right?
I finished it. I'm like, man, I did it. You know, I'm happy. It's this major event, and it's like all this training culminated to this. Like 6 months ago, I never knew I was on this path.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then I did it again, and I did it better. And I was like, man, this is great. I ran a full marathon. That shit sucked. I don't know if I'll ever do that one again. That one sucked.
It was bad?
Yeah, it was the training.
Okay.
So I think I broke my body first off, and then the training too. It just sounds ridiculous. Like, I ran a 15-mile training run. And that was good. And I was in a rhythm to where I could do another 10 more because I was in that rhythm. So I was like, I'm not running more than that. But it showed. When I was running my full marathon, mile 20 came by, and I was done. I hit this wall. My whole body cramped up. I wasn't ready for it. So when it comes to running full marathons, I don't know, because the training is ridiculous. You know, you have to run a couple 20-mile training runs, and I don't think I have the time.
Yeah, we're
willpower to do it. But
my friend Rocky, he wants to do 40 miles for his 40th birthday.
Ultra marathon. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, so we're going to do that in December 3rd.
You're going to do it too?
Yeah, apparently.
Is that why you're running these distances?
Yeah,
just touching the water?
Yeah, a little bit.
My best advice is not to overtrain.
No.
Don't do it. So if you get out here and run 15 miles next week, rest.
Sure.
Because you said December. Take your time, because don't get too many miles too fast. Don't rack up too many miles too fast, because then your lower extremities are going to break.
Yeah. I'm only running once a week at the moment.
Yeah.
Probably keep it that way, because everything else I do is very cardio intensive.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that, right? The flip side of that is almost everything I do kind of assists in running, in the sense, or at least this is how I think about it. Maybe there's no science behind it or not, but I think about when you get kicked in the leg, or you do heavy squats, and you do things of that nature as consistently as I have for a long period of time, or lunging for distance, something that just pumps a ton of blood into whatever muscle group. I feel like when you start to get more and more comfortable with that lactic acid, I feel like that all helps.
I think so.
With that running as well.
I think a part of it too, I mean, it's a physical sport, so don't get me wrong, a lot of it is from the physical aspect of it. But I think everything you just described builds up your mental capacity too. Because again, like you talked about sitting on the couch and eating a pizza, when you're running and you're on your 5th mile, it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Your brain, I think your body literally doesn't want to run. Your body doesn't like running. So your brain is telling you every step, you can just stop right now. Yeah. Stop right now. Take a breather. Your shoes untied. Do this. Do
shoes, yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think once you break that mental wall, physically, your body's going to carry you all the way.
Oh, absolutely.
I think mentally is where everyone needs to, meet with their fitness. It's like, once you have that mental preparedness, dieting is not too difficult. Running is not too difficult. Having this hour-long workout, pushing heavy weights isn't too difficult. So I think the mental capacity when it comes to fitness is just as much as important as your diet and your physical training as well.
I think the mental aspect is almost, I think mentally for anything. I think mental strength is the key to everything.
I believe
no matter what it is, whether it's getting that job, starting your own business, being more fit, whatever it is, it all starts with your mental.
Yeah.
And dude, that was all me this morning when we ran. So we ran 10 800-meter runs this morning at a 3:30 pace, which is not too crazy, but fast enough.
Pretty fast. You're booking it.
Fast enough.
Once you get to your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th 800, you're like, tired.
Yeah. So I mean, each time, 3/4 of the first 400, you're like, okay, we're almost at the finish line, and then you're like, fuck, I got a whole nother one of these.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh no, I could just stop right now.
Yeah.
I could just stop right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just just do 10 400s. Why are we doing 800s?
Right. I'm
not gonna run track. Like, why am I doing 800s? Because it's hard.
Exactly.
I was reading on it. There's a lot of articles that I was reading that believe that the 800 meter run in track is the hardest event.
I think so.
That's what they were saying, because it's just the mental, the mentality of it, the mental part of it. Like, when you're running a mile, you understand that you're going around it 4 times. And I guess you understand for 800, you're going twice. But
I think it's the pace too. I think when it comes to a mile, unless you're like this extremely fast gifted runner, a mile pace is hard. But an 800 pace means you could run. It's short enough to where you can sprint the entire time. And I think that's what it is. And depending on where you're at physically, you can sprint a mile as well. But that 800 is a full-out sprint for 2 laps. And I think that is a really good race to run when you're training. Because it's long enough for you to sprint, but you also open up your lungs, you open up your stride. So it is a good race.
You have to pay attention to your breathing. You have to pay attention, like you said, your stride. I mean, that makes a big difference, because running like 100, the breathing is important, but it's not as important as an 800, because you have to sit there and listen to yourself huff and puff. And the second you get out of cadence, it's like everything falls apart. Your arms start moving like this, all weird,
and then your brain starts talking.
And then your brain's it gets real tricky.
Like, you're like, all right, you can do this next lap, but do you really want to run 800 next time? Just do a couple 100s.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's just jog the next one. So yeah, fighting that mental capacity is it's crazy. The mental is a monster. It really is.
Oh, dude, mental is everything. Mental stops us from doing anything. Fear consumes us. Fear stops you from reaching out to somebody for a business deal. Fear stops you from talking to that person at the grocery store. Fear stops you from getting promoted at your job or going up and above. Like, fear constantly takes you away from opportunities because you're in your head thinking about certain things that just aren't true half the time. Like, nobody else is thinking it. Only you're thinking it.
Right.
You're like, oh, I don't think I can do this. But you're literally the only one in the entire group, in the entire area that's thinking that at the moment.
Yeah.
Only you. You're the only one. Nobody else around you is thinking that right now.
And the way I combat any type of fear or nervousness or anything, especially when it comes to work, it's like confidence. And you talked about earlier, confidence is everything. Because again, if you're going to go deliver a presentation or a briefing to your bosses, whoever they may be, whatever capacity you're in, if you're confident and you did the due diligence and researching your product, they can't tell you shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, I did my work. So you can ask questions I might not be able to answer. I'll get back to you. But I am so confident in what I just presented to you that I'm not afraid of anything. And I think in life, and this is the type of mentality we can carry on with anything we do, know your stuff, control what you can control, and be confident about it. Do enough research to where you're 100% confident, or at least 99% confident, I think confidence will carry us a long way in society if we use it to the best of our ability.
And I think you touched on it just now too. I think you hit it right on the head. Confidence comes from doing the little things right.
Yeah.
If you truly put in the work, because that's how I felt about the fight. That's how I felt about the fight, and that's how I felt about the podcast. And I've kind of slipped up recently, and I'm kind of like not as confident at the moment, and it's just because I have gotten lazy on certain things. Like, I haven't been doing all of the same things that I was doing.
Right.
And I think that speaks to it exactly, because leading up to the fight, my confidence level was through the roof because I knew that the work was being put in. And so I didn't feel the need to post it on social media to tell everybody I was doing this fight. Like, I didn't feel that need to do that because I knew I was going to put in the work.
Right.
And I knew by the day that I was supposed to step in the ring, I knew I had earned the right to step in that ring. And so my confidence was through the roof. Like, I didn't experience any nervousness at the tournament.
Right.
At all.
That's awesome.
While I was in the crowd, while I was getting ready, while I was getting wrapped up, while I was weighing in, nothing. Never. Felt perfectly fine the entire time.
And when you're confident, you don't see the crowd. You don't see any of that.
You don't hear nothing.
You're not nervous. You're just like, I'm in the zone. Yeah. This is what I trained for. I'm ready to do it.
Because you earned it.
You
earned it. You did all the right things.
Yep.
And like you were just saying, if you're putting together this PowerPoint, if you're putting together this presentation for your bosses, if you're going in there like super, super nervous, and not everybody's a good public speaker, or not everybody's good at talking in front of people. And so there might be slight caveats. But for the most part, though, if you truly did everything that you were supposed to do at some capacity, if you did X, Y, and Z, you did all the little things, you jotted the right notes, you did the right research, when you step in front of them, it should be real simple. Because you know you earned it. You earned the right, regardless of how they receive it. Mm-hmm. You earned the right to at least stand in front of them and present it. Mm-hmm. Regardless, you can't control how they receive it. You just can't control that. So that's not something worth worrying about.
Right.
All you can control is that all the behind the scenes things. You did everything that you were supposed to do, and walking in there, you should be in there with your head held high because you did what you were supposed to do. Now, on the flip side, if you half-assed it and you put together a half-assed presentation, of course you're going to walk in there nervous.
Right. And then when you F it up, don't leave that presentation saying, oh, they don't like me, they don't do this and that. Think about what you did and what you controlled.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest moral of any story when it comes
to yourself accountable.
Growth. It's holding yourself accountable and controlling what you can control. So anytime anyone asks me for advice on how to do X, Y, and Z, well, control what you can control, because you can never control what people are thinking. You can't control budget. You can't control a lot of different things. But if it's about education, if you get the highest grades that you can get, possibly, at least you knew you controlled your situation. Yep. And you knew that you put yourself forward to be competitive for other things. Comes to fitness, control what you can control. Maybe might not be the most gifted athlete, but if you put in the training and put in the work, you controlled what you could control at the time. So that's like my biggest advice for everyone.
Because you can control what you put in your mouth. Mm-hmm. You can control what you drink. You can control how much you train. You can control how well you recover.
You can train what you're going to say. Yep. You know what I mean? There's so many things that you can control that can set yourself up for success. And if it's a job interview, for example, and they don't choose you, you go and leave that interview with your chest high and head up high, thinking, hey, I did everything I could do. I'll go to the next one to see where my next opportunity is. But yeah, it's all about controlling your stakes. Mm-hmm. And I'm really big into that.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And that's a good point. And that's another good thing to think on too, because it's just, I think you nailed it. Like, I think confidence comes from doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious. I think, okay, so there's always outliers. I think there's always people who are necessarily born with more confidence than somebody else. Mm-hmm. But when you think of the population, as the population as a whole, now I'm kind of curious, because now I'm not so convinced that anybody is born, like, with the exception of the outliers, I don't think really too many people are born with more confidence than somebody else.
No,
I think so. I think someone just did what they were supposed to more than somebody else.
And like you said, there's outliers. I think some people were born charismatic and great speakers, and people will drew to them regardless.
Sure.
And those are the gifted people. There's gifted people in every single sense.
There's always going to be somebody better.
But yeah, I think you can definitely build your own confidence. I think personally for me, I wasn't always the most confident person growing up. I wasn't the most confident. I wasn't the most popular, you know what I mean? But as I got older and I started realizing, oh, here are the things I can control. Here's how I can be great at it. And here's how people will be more receptive towards me. I learned that life got a lot easier for me after, 16, 17, and 18. Life got really easy because I understood this is how life works. And from there, nothing else matters. That's another thing too, when it comes to confidence, kill the noise. If that noise isn't, helpful for you, it doesn't help you grow, kill the noise. And then you don't care about what decisions you make. You don't care about how you dress. You don't care about whatever you're doing, because if you're confident in what you're doing and it knows it's going to get you to your goal, I don't care what you have to say, because I'm going to do me regardless, and I'm going to grow regardless. So I think there's a lot of levels to that. And I think if that person that grew up never confident, with low self-esteem, whatever the case may be, you start controlling what you can control and you start killing the noise, you got to be a confident person, because your self-esteem will be predicated based on how you feel about yourself and not how other people feel about you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I like it. That was good.
Yeah.
I think definitely spot on. Mm-hmm. I know one thing I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So you're like you said, you need to be on 10. You're very much go, right? Mm-hmm. How does that work with your marriage? How does that work with Savannah? Like, is she also a go?
Yeah.
Or is she just accepted, or is she acceptant of your go?
So Savannah and I are very similar in a lot of ways, but we're also very different. So one thing that we're very similar, like, we're both Virgos. I don't really care about that stuff, but it's just really funny that
just slide that in there.
You talk about fate, right?
Sure.
Her birthday is the day after mine.
Okay.
That is so crazy to me that we literally share the same birthday. You know what I mean? So that's cool. And we do have a lot of similarities, but as far as mentality, about life and things like that. She's a lot more laid back. She cares about the little things, right? She cares about relaxing. She doesn't care about if she was, working some corporate job. She doesn't care about becoming someone's boss. She wants to do what she needs to do to make sure she's happy and with everyone else. I'm the exact opposite. So I am on 10, and I don't think she doesn't like it too much. You know what I mean? But she's accepting of it. She's acceptive of it. Like, she accepted who I am. She knows who I am and how I interact. But that's one thing I can't let get in between me and my marriage too. When it comes to the military, for example, I feel like I can do 20 more years. I could probably do 25 more years, just based off of process elimination. That would make me a 05, 06, potentially set me up for other types of endeavors. But I don't want to sacrifice my family or my relationship just because I wanted to strive to the highest of the mountaintop. You know what I mean? So I think for me, there has to be a cutoff as far as how far my family will go with me. Because again, you can reach these pinnacles, but you don't have your family, you don't have anything.
Sure.
And I think that's something that I've been very understanding when it comes to the decisions I make. Because when you're single and you're by yourself, you make decisions about you and about you only. It's very easy. But now these decisions have to be talked to with my wife. My daughter's going to grow up one day. We're going to have to talk about, what she wants to do when it comes to schooling and things like that. So I think there's a happy medium. But so far, everything's great. She's understanding. She knows who I am. She knows I'm different in that set of things. Yeah. But everything works out. And she's very supportive at the end of the day. So
that's good. What is like, do y'all, like, what is it that, I guess, so she's accepting of it. What is, like, what do y'all do? Like, is there something specifically that y'all do as a couple that keeps a relationship running fluid? Y'all really communicative?
That's it. It's all communication. It's all communication. And I think when we dated for a year before we got married, but we were always friends. Like, I'm not going to say that we were friends and then started dating, but we dated, but we were friends the whole time. So guard was always dropped. And I think when we got married, none of that changed. And I never understood why some people get married and life changes and then things become a chore and all that stuff. It's like, no, we're friends. We had a baby about 8 months ago. Baby's rough. You know what I mean? That brings in an entire new dynamic. We communicate and we enjoy our time together and we find things that we like to do together. And I think that makes things a lot more enjoyable when you're married with someone and you plan on being with someone for the next 70, 80 years. You know what I mean? So
yeah, you find a bunch of stuff that y'all enjoy to do together, and then y'all have your things that you enjoy that y'all do yourselves.
Yeah, but honestly, I can't think of many things that I don't do without her. You know what I mean? I get caught up watching all the TLC shows and things like that, and I enjoy it, and it gives us time to chill and relax. You know what I mean? So yeah, we communicate a lot, and that's what makes things a lot better.
Sure. It's all about balance.
Yeah, and she doesn't let me bullshit her either. I think I have to add that in there because I think me personally, sometimes I could beat around the bush. I'm not very, I don't know if confrontational is the right word, but I like to let people down easy, things of that nature. She's the exact opposite. She's like, don't bullshit me. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you want to do, blah, blah, blah.
So much easier that way,
that's
in my opinion.
No, it's helped me too because I'm very like non-confrontational, but she was upfront. She was very blunt. And I was like, okay, I appreciate that. And it helps me grow as well. So again, we keep each other on our toes big time.
Yeah, I just think it's so much I just think life is so much easier that way. Mm-hmm. When you don't have to guess what the other person is thinking, it makes it that much easier.
Yeah.
Like, I shouldn't have to guess what you're thinking, especially if we're in a relationship. Like,
exactly.
It shouldn't be like I shouldn't have to read your mind.
Right.
Like, you should feel comfortable enough with that person to tell them exactly how you feel.
Exactly.
And be confident that no matter how it is that you feel, or no matter how that they perceive how you feel, that y'all should be able to come to some kind of solution. Like, you should be like, if y'all truly want to be together, you should have no problem telling somebody how you feel, and then knowing that after telling them how you feel, that y'all are going to come to some kind of agreement.
Exactly. There's that. Oh, and then also we talk about communication too, and being upfront with each other. Because of that dynamic that we have, we don't go to bed mad at each other.
Oh, you can't.
Because one, you shouldn't, because you fester a problem that goes into the next day. And two, it's like you make up eventually, and that creates a stronger bond. You know what I mean? You make up before you go to bed, and then everything's great, or it should be moving on to being more great. You know, so our arguments are always about menial stuff. It's like cleaning. You know what I mean? But as long as our arguments aren't about the deal breaking things, I think everything's good to go.
Yeah, so. And then another thing too is like not going to bed angry. It also just for your mental, it's better. You're going to sleep better. You're going to wake up in a better mood. You're going to be able to go into the next day better.
Yeah.
You're going to go. Lingering. Yeah. You're going to go to bed that night feeling better. Like everything is better about that situation versus letting it roll over.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of childish when you do that too.
It is. There's that. And then there's like the dynamic that I'm sure we've all seen it where parents are going to separate rooms or something like that. It's like we made a pact where we don't really do that because that doesn't help anything. I mean, maybe you might need to go blow off steam. So yeah, maybe I can go play the game or something like that. But we don't do the whole, I'm going to go in another room and not talk to you for 2 hours because that's also very childish and nothing's actually happening in that moment. Yeah. So we try to communicate through our arguments and through our spats, and then I think that builds a better union.
Sure.
For sure.
And I can agree with that. I think some people necessarily have to have I think some people are very, very quick and very what's the word I'm looking for here? Like very jump the gun, like they're very impulsive. There we go. They're very impulsive, and so I think some people do kind of need a cool down period just because they're probably going to say something that they probably shouldn't say. So I think there's certain things that work for certain people, but I mean we're pretty calm and level-headed people, so usually we're not the ones to kind of blow up and say something that we don't really mean. Right. But I can see how some people kind of just need that like hour. They're like, okay, let me cool down first before we actually have the conversation. Because if we have the conversation right now, I'm going to say something mean and it's not going to be really how I feel. Right. Or it's not going to be, it's just not going to come off the right way. Right. And so like whatever works for you. But I do think that no matter what, you should strive to definitely not to go to bed angry. Yeah. I think that's definitely a big part of it. Finding that balance in the relationship and also being just communicative. Just communicate to each other. Just tell each other what you're feeling, what you're doing. Like just be open with each other. And there should never be really that too many issues. Everything in life seems pretty simple. They just get overcomplicated.
If you keep things simple, things are simple. That's when you start overcomplicating things. That's when things start to go left and right, for sure.
That's when things get weird.
Yeah, for sure, man. But I one more thing on being married, though.
Sure.
I do enjoy it. And I think when we talk about growth and everything, I think it's helping me grow because...
that's what they should do. Your spouse should help you grow.
Yeah, and it helps you concentrate. Like, dude, like, I can't tell you how many, like, hours I spent dating and, like, figuring out what's next and trying to be out there and, you know, talk to as many people. Like, it's exhausting. It's literally exhausting. And those hours that you're spending dating all these different people, it's like I could be putting that into myself or into something that can grow together. You know what I mean? Like, think about when you're single and you're like going hard. Say you spend 2 or 3 hours a date, you know what I mean, with someone, and say you do that 3 or 4 times a week. That's a lot of time and energy. That's a part-time job that you're spending dating multiple people. You know what I mean? It's stressful.
It is.
You get tired of it. You get tired of the chase. So I knew at a certain point, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Because even if you could be with as many people as you want, there's a void. There's a major void. Even if you know, the moment can end and it's like, fuck, I feel like I'm missing something, you know?
Feel empty.
Yeah, you feel empty. So, like, getting married, and not to say I got married only for growth, right? But, like, everything worked the way it was supposed to. And it's like, I don't think back. I don't look back at it because I look back at those times. It's like, that wasn't fun. Like, I think I'm inclined to think it was fun, but it wasn't. When you think about the times where you're sitting alone after all that, it's like, now what? You know what I mean? So I never wanted to be my age or older doing the chase.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because it doesn't help me mentally because you're focused on something else. You're spending 33% of your time focused on something else. And I never wanted to be like that. So
yeah, now you have this, and then you also have this sense of fulfillment now. You had a kid.
Yeah. And that's a major change too. And she's still young, so she can't communicate two-way to me, you know, but she smiles at me and things like that. And yeah, it's just another thing that I have to think about when it comes to how I move in anything, honestly. It's like changing the way I drive. It's just like I have to be here for her no matter what. And I have to be here for my wife as well because she deals with most of the burden of the child, you know. So it's like a lot of sense of fulfillment, but a lot of sense of responsibility, and I enjoy it. I really do.
Yeah, how's that been so far? Having a kid.
So at first, being completely honest, the first 6 weeks were really rough. It starts the moment that, like, first off, my wife, she had the baby a couple weeks early. So we weren't even prepared for that. We didn't get we weren't sleeping in like we were supposed to. So the baby comes And yeah, immediately the doctor tells you, they feed every 2 to 3 hours. You're like, what? Where am I going to sleep? And you don't sleep. Me and my wife had a good system, and she's not breastfeeding, so we did formula feed, but every 3 hours, one or the other would be feeding her. So and when I started working, I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, feed the baby, go work out at 5 a.m. Then I shower, and then my day starts. I get to work at 7:30. I'm like, fuck, I've been up for 3 hours already. What the hell? So it is rough. And it seems like your days, that's another thing too. I think she's aging me like crazy. Bro, I can't believe how much time has flown. You know what I mean? Like, these days, months, and weeks just merge together. Yeah. I can't believe it's been 8 months already.
Yeah.
So your days, you're going to look at the clock, or you're going to look at the date, and you're like, what the hell happened? You know what I mean? She's going to be a year old in a couple months, and it's going to be like, it all feels like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what your parents were talking about when they said, man, you grow up fast. Damn, you're already graduating. Damn, you're in college already.
I can't even fathom that. You know, I was talking to someone. I went to a wedding yesterday, and I was talking to someone. I was like, yeah, my daughter just graduated high school, last week and all that. And it's like, I don't even want to think about that right now, because it kind of gets you kind of emotional. It's like, damn, and like, all this is temporary. And it ties back to the military and things of that nature too. I have to be here for my family. I can only imagine fading a 1-year deployment right now. I'll come back, and she's going to be a totally different person. Yeah. And to my best ability, that's an agreement me and my wife had too. I will never volunteer to leave the family. You know what I mean? Duty calls, you know what I mean? But my goal is to be as present as I can, because I know there's going to be times where duty does call and I have to be gone. And if I plan on doing this thing for 20 more years, I have to cherish those moments. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
you got to be present. You got to be present.
For sure.
Have to be present. You got to be a big part.
Exactly.
You got to be a big part in our life. And it's cool, like what you said, though. You still had to get up to feed the kid, but you still also found time to work out. You still found the time to do what you were supposed to. You found the time which you had to do in order to keep you sane. Because for me, working out keeps me sane. It does. Like, I have to.
It does. I have to. Bent up testosterone that needs to be exhausted.
Something.
My wife sometimes like, you need to go work out. I was like, okay, I'll go work out.
Yeah, like something, right? I don't know exactly what it is. Whether it's just like built up testosterone, or like I just start to go crazy. I'm just like, fuck, I gotta work out. Like, I have to work out. I got something too much build up of something. Right. Whether it's energy or testosterone or whatever, I gotta get it out. And that's I guess that's kind of what I was getting at earlier with y'all's marriage, and still being able to do the things that you want to do. Right. Like having that balance though. Right. It is.
You have to be able to reciprocate that. You gotta, and I think that's the challenge of being married with two different paths. It's like, I have to make sure that she gets where she wants to be too. It's like, I've reached most of my goals that I've wanted to do so far, but I need to make sure that she gets to get to her goals as well, because at the end of the day, it'd be extremely lopsided, and there may be some resentment there. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it is very equal. You have to make sure it's equal, so that way everyone is prospering together and everyone's reaching their goals. Then you can just move forward. Yeah,
because it's not fair for her to let you go to the gym and then she's like, "Hey, honey, I want to go to girls' night." And you're like, "Nah."
Yeah, I want to break the baby's, doing this and that. So
and you're like, "Nah, I ain't watching the baby by myself." The fuck?
right.
You got me fucked up.
Yeah, and as men, it's hard to do that too, honestly, because when you do have a child, they're 9 times out of 10, if you are the one that's working, they're gonna cling to the mom. And babysitting and watching your child is so much harder when you're not there 12 hours out the day. You only get 4 hours. And that's another thing that shakes me.
Oh, that's interesting.
I only get 4 hours. Think about it. I leave when she's sleeping. I come home, and I've been working long hours these days, relatively long. I get home at 6 now, and it's like, we got to put the baby to bed at 7:30. So shit, when I think about it, I only have an hour and a half with her. So it's extremely lopsided. So yeah, that's why you got to cherish the moments. And if the wife does want to go on girls' night out, go ahead. So that way I can bond with my child too. So
yeah, that's. I never even really thought about that.
Yeah, think about the
that's
working
an interesting.
dad-child relationship.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. Like, how do you explain that? Like, there's nothing you can really do. She's 8 months.
Yeah,
like it's not like you can have a conversation with her. Like, hey, this is what Daddy does. Daddy has to go do this and this.
Yeah,
and he does this for you and this for the country and this and this and. Yeah. You can't have that conversation with her yet.
She sees mom as her
but
line
she
of survival.
she only sees mom right now.
Yeah, so it's a wild dynamic, and I'm gonna lose that battle forever until she's walking and until I can take her to the park.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But right now, those first years, the first year or two is probably really tough for dads. I remember early on, there's a point where she just didn't like me because she just wasn't comfortable with me. And it's like, man, she doesn't even like me, you know what I mean? But over time, you take advantage of those weekends and things like that. But something to think about for, the future dads out there.
That is a really interesting thought process. I've never really thought about it like that. What's one thing you want to make sure that you instill in her?
Discipline. I think that's a no-brainer. My parents, especially my dad, military background, like, he's still disciplined. I don't want to be like a drill sergeant or any shit like that, but I just want her to have manners and be a decent human being. You know, you're going to speak to your adults and say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. You're going to be respectful. You know, all the basic things that most of us should have been taught growing up. I want her to be like that. And I think the next thing, I want her to be goal-orientated. I want her to have something that she wants to do. I want her to reach those goals and not quit.
And how do you plan on implementing that?
That's a good question. So it's easy to talk about, right? I think the manners thing is easy. Manners thing is like, hey, when you talk to me and your mother, this is how you respond.
And then that reciprocate, and then that gets pushed out into the rest of the world too.
Yeah, that one's easy part.
Yeah, sure.
The goal situation, I don't know. My wife always tells me, like, you don't know who she's gonna be like. You don't know if she's gonna be like you or me or anyone else. You know what I mean? So in my mind, and that's a really bad thing. Like, you have to understand yourself as well when you're leading people or whatever case may be. Because in my mind, it's like, well, shit, if I can do it, and if I've done it, you got to be able to do it too. You're my daughter.
Yeah.
And I got to make sure I don't do that, because I feel like that pushes kids away from their parents, and the parents put too much pressure on them to be like who they were. So that's a good point. That's a good question. I've never actually thought about how I'm going to instill that. I might have to read some books or something, honestly.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, it's kind of tough because like you don't want her to start a bunch of different tasks and not finish them.
Right.
But at the same time, when they're at that young age, you kind of want them to explore different things. Like, for instance, to bring up Rocky again, his daughter, if I remember this correctly, and I might butcher this story, I'm sorry, Rocky. But if I remember correctly, I think at a younger age, she was all in gymnastics, just all in. And then one day she woke up and she was like, Dad, I don't want to do this no more.
Yeah.
She was like, I want to play softball. Mm-hmm. And then he said, okay.
Yeah.
Put away all the gymnastic stuff. Got rid of all of it or whatever, went out and got all softball stuff. And then now she still plays softball now, and she plays for the national team here and she's a pitcher, and she's doing really good, getting looks at from some big universities. And so it's like, you know, it's again, it's just all about that balance. Like, he could easily just said, nah, don't give up on gymnastics. Mm-hmm. But she didn't want to do gymnastics no more. But in a way, she's kind of giving up on something that she had already put in like 3-4 years, right?
Right.
So it's a real, it's really interesting.
Because we want them to enjoy life too.
Absolutely.
So if she wants to play softball, she's gonna have to. And again, that's something that you know what I mean. If I want her to be this basketball player, because I can see it in her, I can see that she's been tall. Like, I have to let her breathe and say, Dad, I want to go swim instead.
Yeah, or maybe she wants to play volleyball.
You know what I mean?
Maybe she doesn't want to play basketball.
Yeah, and I have to go with that. And I think that's why being married, for example, helps out, because you kind of have the yin and the yang. Like, my wife will probably be a lot more receptive to her doing whatever the hell she wants. And maybe if I'm more like, oh, you got to do this, it helps us have a more informed decision as far as how the parent unit is going to move, and then how we're going to, let our daughter, interact with the world.
How'd y'all prepare for having a kid? What kind of conversations did y'all have while she was pregnant, or when you found out?
I had conversations like this, but no conversation that we would have
can really prepare you.
No conversation that we would have had. No talking with previous parents would never prepared us. And if anyone's expecting out here, let me put it like this: get a registry, get all the things like the bottles, the cribs, all the essential things. Get that stuff. Have your family pay for it. That's the best thing. Outside of that, as far as raising a child or a baby, an infant, there's no rules.
But have y'all talked about, have y'all sat down and talked about, okay, this is how I was raised, this is how I was disciplined?
When it comes to that, we're actually very similar. So that's one thing that I'm happy about when we got married. Like, it's not a difference in culture, religion, or anything like that. So those conversations were really easy. I think we're both pretty liberal when it comes to, ideology. You know what I mean? So we're not, super conservative, like, you're gonna go to church and Sunday school and things like that. If she doesn't want to go to church, fine. But I think I'm more open to her understanding everything and then choosing her own path. But when it comes to thinking about how we're gonna raise a child, there's not much discrepancy. I think my wife is big on her not joining the military, for example. But I'm like, I wouldn't mind her going to academy school or whatever.
Yeah, the military is a tricky one for women.
Yeah, my wife she served as well, and she will tell me up and down that there's a totally different perspective of the military than what I experienced.
My dad made everybody in his unit watch The Invisible War. Everybody.
I don't think I've actually seen that, actually.
Never seen The Invisible War?
I have not.
It's almost as depressing as the statistics of how many girls are sexually assaulted in college. Like it's almost equivalent, if not worse, in the military.
It's probably worse in the military, just because a random statistic is like it's 8 to 2. It's like usually 8 dudes to 2, 2 women, and it's like it's sad because the statistics are pretty bad. And I think what we see is only what we know. There's a lot of unreported statistics. There are a lot of unreported cases out there, and it's really sad.
It is, yeah. So it is tricky having a little girl and then talk about the military portion.
That's why my wife's like, no. I
don't but then you can make the same argument for college. Like, is it really good? Is it really good for her to go to college?
There's more alcohol and there's more situations, and it's like it's hard to be a woman these days. And I don't think about it yet. I don't try to ponder on it yet with my daughter, but. Me and my wife have these conversations all the time, and she puts me on game. It's like, it's scary. And I think about it, it's like, it is scary to be a woman. It's like, all the vulnerabilities that she has, I have none of them. I'm bigger than a lot of people. I'm not this small, frail person. And not to say that all women are small and frail, but my wife, for example, is 5'2".
Sure.
105 or 6 pounds.
She's tiny. Yeah, she's tiny.
She's defenseless in most cases. I mean, me, I'm like 3 times stronger than her. You know what I mean? That's scary. I couldn't imagine that there were people walking around here 3 or 4 times stronger than me.
She could be a black belt in jiu-jitsu and still get overpowered by you.
Yeah.
Like, she could be a black belt and she could know exactly what to do to put you in an armbar or to hurt you, but she wouldn't have the physical strength to do it.
Yeah, and that's scary.
It is scary because
imagine if there were 7-foot men that were benching 600 or 700 pounds. And they were intimidating, and if they wanted something from you, they'd get it.
Anything.
That's scary.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
She could put you in an arm bar, and you would literally just pick her up with your arm.
I know.
And then drop her.
Yeah. So it's like, I understand that, and she brings up good points when it comes to women in the military and things like that. So that's something where we have to figure out what's the best for our daughter, and if she actually even wants to do those things. But I think it comes with raising your daughter, too, and helping her understand situations. You know what I mean?
And I think there's a fine line of going down that path too, of having the proper amount of awareness, but not necessarily being overly fearful.
Yeah, I see what you mean, because then you wouldn't want to live. You wouldn't want to enjoy your life because you're living in fear. But I think you just talk to them as you give them the reality of situations, and like, don't travel alone. Make sure you always have your friends with you. Things of that nature. Hopefully things go well. You know what I mean? I am afraid of, like, I don't like watching the local news, for example. And maybe it's naive because I don't know what's going on around me, but it's actually depressing. And when I start to watch the local news and I start to see what's going on, it kind of scares me. I try to tune that out.
Yeah, but then we talked about it earlier. Like, most crime is down statistically, but then you turn on the local news and it doesn't seem like that at all.
I live in Miami right now, and it's literally ridiculous when I cut on the news.
Oh, I bet.
It's ridiculous, but also, like, you talk about the crime rate. How could the crime rate be so low, but I see so many cases in the news? And I think I figured it out to where Miami, a metro of millions of people, is divided in so many subsectors, so many sub-cities. So there might be one killing in this city and another killing in another city, and you happen to have an event every day on the news, but there's 100 cities within this major metropolitan area that has one event every other day. So it makes you think that the crime is high. So I think the way things are reported too make you think like, holy crap, I live in this crazy ass area.
But then when you put it into perspective and take a step back, you're like, oh, there's one person out of
1 per 100,000.
Yeah, 1 per 100,000 or whatever the number is. You're like, no, it's not that frequent.
Yeah.
You just hear about it more. It's not all that frequent.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I mean, think about it. Like, how many if it was as frequent as it, like, seems sometimes, wouldn't more people experience more things in life? Like,
perhaps.
Think about, like, if murder or theft or something like that was so frequent as it appears to be, wouldn't I've never seen someone murdered in front of me.
But I think this is a good conversation to have too. I think it's a matter of context and where you are geographically.
Sure.
Sure. Because personally, I haven't seen it. I think my dad's car got broken into a long time ago when I was, younger and clean. But I do think that there are subsets of populations that see it.
Oh yeah.
I think I got in this conversation with Norman on Twitter. Maybe it wasn't Norman, but it was someone else on Twitter, and we were talking about how clean isn't this bad of a place.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
I was like, I don't know what part of clean you guys grew up in, but it's really not that bad. But then when you really do think about this, how many small areas are in Killeen and what people see, there are some areas in Killeen where people do experience this
absolutely
on the daily.
He talked about it in the episode. And so by the time people listen to this, his episode would be released. And so he talked about it in that episode. He talks about how one thing that stood out to me, and I've told so many people this story already. One thing that stood out to me is he said he was looking through old middle school photos of them playing pickup basketball. Mm-hmm. And he was just flipping through the photos, and he was realizing like how many of those people were not here no more.
Wow.
How many of those people were dead. Like how many of those people that he knew died in Killeen.
Yeah.
Or he talked about how his the person that lived across from him died from gun violence. Mm-hmm. Or he talked about or just him flipping through all those old photos, and it's just like that's something that most people can't relate to.
That's true.
And I think that's a lot of times where this disconnect comes from. This disconnect where people live, there's definitely people that don't live very in touch with reality. Mm-hmm. Because yes, I might be disconnected from that life, and I may not be living in an area where that's very prominent and I can't necessarily relate. I have the empathy in order to try to understand that. Even though it's not something that I personally live in, it's something that I try to understand.
And that's very important. I'm glad you said that. I think last year was a crazy year for a lot of different reasons. I think after May 2020 with the George Floyd incident, I think we got to a point to where a lot of people, like a lot of white people, a lot of non-people of color were sitting back and saying, why don't I understand what's happening? Why don't I understand what's going on? And a lot of people have stood up and asked those questions and said, let me talk to you. How can I help? How can I understand? And I think that this conversation right here is very important. I mean, we've had these conversations personally all the time, but I think this needs to happen a lot because, again, I think where the disconnect is for a lot of people, they may live in their bubble and everything's great. They live in a suburban neighborhood. Maybe there's a black family or two on the street. They're also living great. So you think it can't be a problem. But then you look at an area where there's a predominant population of black people or people of color, bad schools, bad situations all around. And then if you can understand how that happens and how that is happening to people, then you can understand why people are mad, people are frustrated, whatever the case may be. And I think you saying, I don't experience that, I haven't experienced that, but I'm willing to understand, I think that's the most important thing that we could do as a society when it comes to race relations. I think legislature is the next thing, but having those conversations, understanding is very important.
And to be fair, to be fair, to kind of, I guess, take a step back and not toot my own horn. Like, to be fair, I have lived in close proximity. Mm-hmm. So I have a better understanding because the majority of my friends are black or the majority of my friends are from areas that weren't as good. Right. And so I do have a little bit more insight than somebody maybe who's grown up in Lakeway their entire life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then at the same time, though, you kind of have to take a step back and think it from their perspective. It's really hard for them to understand.
It is.
Like, how would they undernd? Like, how do they understand, right?
All you know is the media.
Because there could even be a black family that lives in Lakeway their entire life, and they might not even fully understand.
Right. It's true.
Because it's kind of tough. Like, how would you understand? That is your bubble. That's where you've lived your entire life. Mm-hmm. And so for someone to expect them to understand their struggles, that's kind of tough because they're struggling in a different way.
That's fair.
They're struggling because they can't get something delivered quick enough.
Right.
Or they're struggling because their pool broke or whatever. Right. It's different struggles. Mm-hmm. Right. But I think it kind of goes both ways because you can't be over here and be upset that they don't understand if we haven't tried to explain it. Mm. But they up there can't look down on these people without trying to understand the situation as well.
It's a good point. I think it's all about conversations and raising awareness. And I think the media there are a lot of campaigns to raise awareness, and I just hope that people were receptive of it, because I think what happened last year was the best way to get people that were on top of the hill to understand what the differences are and how can we relate and how can we make things better in society.
But then it gets political.
Yeah.
And then and then it gets drowned out.
It does.
And we talked about that too. We talked about how oftentimes, so I have a theory that oftentimes people are less receptive to something. We'll take, for instance, gay marriage, right? I think that sometimes some people are less receptive to something like that. And just to use it as an example, they're scared to vote to make gay marriage legal because sometimes they're scared about what comes next.
Yeah.
Because then there's like, and yes, this is a very, very small population, but then there was those people that were like pedophiles, you know, they're people too, and da 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 da, and they just have problems, and we should pedophile or whatever it was. I don't remember the exact context, but I think that's sometimes, like, whether that's right or wrong, whether that person who's hesitant for voting for gay marriage in fear of what could come next, because then you're worried about something that hasn't happened yet,
right? Which is
an issue in its own. So whether that person is right or wrong, sometimes I can understand that, right? Sometimes it's like we were talking about gun control and how tricky that is. Okay, so we ban assault weapons. Okay, most people would be like, all right, whatever, right? You'd have a few people upset, but most people would just be like, okay,
right.
But what then happens next? There's so many people who are kind of scared of that, even though that may be the right thing or may not be the right thing. Because I know people who own AR-15s that would never do anything wrong in their life, like to that extent.
Right.
But I could see why someone would be worried about those particular type of weapons on the streets, or just in just regular civilians' hands. But it's like sometimes they're scared to take that next step in something that may be beneficial to society, because then it's like, oh, they said yes to this, what can we pass next?
And I think you hit on the nail too. It's like, instead of thinking about, I guess it's hard to say because I feel like a politician's always thinking about what's next, because they're always thinking about how to get reelected, right?
Yeah.
But from a layman's perspective, passing legislature that makes sense, that moves forward, instead of thinking about the random scenarios that can happen after that bill is being passed, I think it should be looked upon. I think you should think about, hey, if we are having mass shootings at a rate that no other country has, other than, funny enough, some dude on Joe Rogan said Brazil actually has a higher.
Oh, Brazil's bad right now. Bad.
Pretty ridiculous.
Yes.
But for us, we have to find a solution. So if the solution is banning assault rifles with high capacity magazines, we have to put that legislation in place, and then we'll see what happens next. We'll see how we can move forward and make sure everyone's happy, but we have to fix a problem. When it came to gay marriage 10, 15 years ago, it's like, hey, these people aren't getting the same rights when it comes to marriage. We have to pass this ban. All the other stuff, all the minutia, we'll figure it out. But we have to make sure we get this makes sense legislation.
But to play devil's advocate, we see where that gets weird, and we're seeing that on social media. How even sometimes people on the left, or even you'll comment on something on Twitter, and you'll be like, "Well, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
like where the fuck are we going with this?"
Yeah, sometimes
see
it's like,
that, but that's
ridiculous.
So that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
So that, and even though that's a very minute population, right? That person probably has, I don't know, 100 people that agree with them, or 1,000 people that agree with them. It's a very small
population. If it's a tweet with 20,000 likes, that is
still very. It's still very small, but that's 20,000 people, though. You know, and that line is always getting pushed forward. Like, it's always getting further and further. Like how recent, like on Mother's Day, they were talking about changing it to the birthing.
I saw that.
Birthing something day.
We talked about misinformation and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And it's just where we're at in society. How outrage culture can become something out of nothing. I don't know if anyone actually
me either. It. But I did see.
But it became a talking point.
I did see big celebrities tweeting about it, retweeting about it, and thankfully both. I think both sides were in agreement on this one that was a it would be a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Because someone brought up a great point. It would take away what someone did for adopting a kid. Mm-hmm. Birthing mother, so that person didn't get...
You marginalize someone that can't have children. And there are mothers without the birth part. Yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I don't think anybody was really for it. It's just, but on the flip side, what if someone threw that out there and it fucking stuck?
Yeah, true.
Like, what if it stuck, though?
I think what you're talking about, too, is things being pushed forward. I think when it comes to legislation, and I think we're going towards... It's not going to happen this year. But I think by the end of this administration, I think America is going to be a $15 minimum wage country. But I think that's good. It's not a livable wage. I don't think you can have livable wage and minimum wage in the same sentence because it doesn't make sense, one. But then you get on Twitter and people are like, all right, then let's shoot for 25. Let's shoot for 30. Let's shoot for 50. And it's like, I don't know if that makes sense if an entry-level job working at name your commercial or retailer job is making $50 an hour. I don't know if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Economics wouldn't allow it
because everything would inflate.
Yeah,
and I think making everything $15 an hour doesn't really inflate everything.
Dude, we just had $9 truffle fries.
Yeah, look, I don't know. I think inflation has happened. Inflation has been happening,
but you got to
understand with or without the minimum wage rising.
Sure. I don't disagree. And I think there's a lot of other factors that come into the prices going up right now.
Right.
But at the same time, though, it's very easy to just put that off on something else.
True.
Because it's something that you want passed. You know what I mean? Like, we're all like, yeah, $15 an hour. And then we see something go up in price and we're like, no, that has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And maybe you're 100% right, but you could also be wrong.
Yeah.
It could be going up because of that. Yeah. I'm not an economist.
Right.
I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
All I can see is prices are rising across the board. Food.
Yeah.
Other than the obvious. We obviously know wood, lumber, foams, gas. We understand those things going up because there's so-called shortages.
Right.
Whether it is a shortage or not a shortage, that's a whole nother conversation. But we understand that those prices are going to rise because of demand. But why the fuck is my yogurt $1 more at H-E-B?
See, I think I don't know if we can evaluate these things yet. I think we'll really be able to find the correlation if there was a correlation to the pandemic and everything else happening in a year or two. Because like we talked about at dinner, you said that things are rising, but are companies actually going to pull back the prices and get back to normal? So we'll see in a year or two.
I guess that's be the case. I think that would probably be the deciding factor, right?
Yeah, we'll see in a year or two if things don't come back down. Because I think right now, things fluctuating and pushing up makes sense because there's demand that the supply wasn't there for a year. But if 2022 and 2023, we see the prices stay and lumber, for example, stays at the price and other things stay hyperinflated, it's like, all right, now it's systematic. Now businesses are trying to make profit off of people.
Think about it like this.
Because we paid it already.
Think about it like this, right? We also talked about this at dinner. Why would they want it to stop? Why would the lumber companies want this to stop? So here, when it comes to whether or not the prices will drop, here's another reason why they might not drop. Because even if the shortages get alleviated and it's not costing the lumber company as much money as it is to acquire the lumber, what if people just keep buying the products, though, at those prices?
Yeah.
Because they become a norm now. So instead of my couch going back down to $19.99, why not just keep it at $23.99, see if you can still sell it, and then now you're making even more profit. Because right now the prices are marked up in order to keep the same profit margin. But then what if prices of lumber go back down from the manufacturer,
but you don't change the price.
But the prices don't get changed?
That's not fair to the consumer. But again, a consumer's always going to say it's not fair. But to the businessman, he's like, well, I just made another profit off of something that you were going to pay for.
Yeah, anyway. I've made double profit now.
Yeah.
What is going to control them to bring that down? What no one can step in. You can't. The government can't step in and make a private business bring their prices back down to where they were 2 years ago, even if these shortages are no longer happening.
Yeah, unless there's some type of bailout or incentive, and I just don't know if that's the direction we're going.
Yeah, you can't control those businesses now. Obviously, it would be smart for someone to come in and undercut those businesses. However, these large established businesses, they can pretty much do whatever they want. No one's undercutting Amazon. That's not happening. That's not happening.
But at the end of the day, Amazon also is affordable. So I think it all depends on what happens. Because maybe Amazon starts getting into the furniture business, for example, and that $2,300 couch sold at Business X is now $900 at Amazon or IKEA, whatever else it is. So it's up to those countries to keep other companies, or those companies to keep other companies honest. But I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, but then they'd have, at that point, we would be relying on specific companies to keep other companies honest. Yeah. And if all companies just decide just to keep the prices up, right, then they just stay up.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
They stay up. And then how do we even find out about a lumber shortage? Like, how can us as normal people,
lumber stocks, you know what I mean?
Yeah, how is us as normal people, how can we even qualify that information? Yeah, how can we actually prove that these companies can't get lumber?
That's the thing. I don't even know. I just know because of word of mouth and everyone said it, and people see the sticker price moving up. But like we talked about when it comes to stocks and everything, a lot of stuff might just be artificial. It's not real. Sure. And you can name your price, name your stock price, and then drop it or raise it to turn a profit. Yeah. So I don't know.
And sure, none of that's real. However, not being able to afford something is fucking real. Yeah. Right. I mean, not having prices go up, but we're not making any extra money, that's a real thing. Yeah. And I've lived in Alaska. Mm-hmm. It's just like Hawaii, where a gallon of milk is $7.
A Big Mac is $13.
Yeah, that's just normal. Yeah. That's just how it is up there. Mm-hmm. But they also make a lot more money. Right. But it's also more expensive. So it's like, how much more money are you actually making? Right. So that's the whole argument against like $15 an hour or against $20 an hour or whatever it is. That's the whole argument, because if you go to Hawaii, if you go to Alaska, where they do make more money, where
they probably already are making $10 to $15 a month.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
They probably already are.
I think in Hawaii, I think minimum's already 15. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's really no place that pays less than that in Hawaii. Yeah. And but everything else there is so expensive. So what did you? What did you gain? You didn't gain anything.
It's only livable. For example, when we talk about 15, it's only livable if you live in Alabama. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't even know if 15 minimum wage will be livable here. No. But what is the solution? What is the solution? Is everyone on the livable wage, or is it that minimum wage is so low due to inflation that it has to come up? And I think that's what people are saying. I think minimum wage has been the same for a lot of places.
And prices keep going. And prices keep going up no matter what.
I think 15 is the goal. I think we should be good.
And that could be fair too, right? You could easily make that counter argument saying that it's just another kind of power construct, because inflation has been naturally occurring anyways, right? But people getting paid necessarily hasn't went up. Mm-mm. And so that you can make that counter argument, right? Mm-hmm. Because another good example of making that counter argument is like Bitcoin millionaires, Tesla millionaires, all the people who have made millions of dollars off of Bitcoin, Tesla, Doge, any of those that have jumped significantly in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. All those people just randomly becoming millionaires, that causes inflation.
I wonder what the effect is on that, because we're gonna see right now crypto's tanking.
Buy more.
Yeah, that's what
buy
they say.
more.
They say buy more. Right now it's tanking, but it's like GameStop, the crypto craze. It's like people are becoming self-made millionaires. Yeah. The government, at some point, the government's going to find a way to squash it. Some way, somehow. Because there are a lot of people, if they just held Dogecoin, you could have so many millionaires if you just held it over the past couple of years. Yep. I mean, there's a bunch more coins that are at 0.000005 cents. All it takes is for that coin to get to 1 cent, and now you just made a bunch of 100,000aires. I don't know. I don't know where society's going to go.
Yeah, because where's that money come from? Like, where does that money come from?
You know what? That's a good point.
It's so...
It's not real.
No, it's not. No, I mean, it is real.
People buy into it. That's why
it is real, and it has its own value. But now all of a sudden you're giving someone $1 million. Like, where is that one? Where it's just... Yeah. It's just weird. Like,
it is weird. It's weird how things are going, because I think we've seen it collectively. You can pump a stock
Yeah.
It's short lived, but you can literally pump something and then everyone can get bread. And I really do think the suits in Washington, the suits in Wall Street are like, this can't happen to me more. Because I think
GameStop GameStop rattled everything.
Yeah, because it was ridiculous, especially because it's not this random cryptocurrency thing that no one understands. It's the actual stock market.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait a minute, these folks are gaming something that was $5 now pushed up $300, and all these people made so much
for
money.
a company that can't be doing well.
It can't.
No,
it
can't.
Literally can't.
It can't. Brick and mortar stores are going away.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate truth, but they're going away eventually.
So it should have never been up there. And
no.
Isn't it still holding over $100?
Oh, yeah.
It should never be like that because GameStop is dead.
Yeah.
It's
not
like,
anymore.
It's like the blockbuster of games. I mean,
it really is.
Consoles are not being made with CD disc anymore.
No, you don't go to GameStop that often.
I don't.
No.
I haven't bought a physical copy game in like 4 years.
Why would you? It's just more junk to lay around your house.
And I'm not gonna make money back anyway. So
right? They're gonna give you $2 for it when you go to trade it in. So what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point? Yeah, it's all. I mean, I don't know. It's just I love having these conversations because it's just all so. I don't know how else to say it other than weird. Like,
it's weird. And you also can't time it too because like there's another meme coin, Shiba Inu. Like there's a bunch of Doge.
Yeah.
What is it? Actually, what is the name of the dog? Is it Shiba Inu?
I believe so. Shiba.
There's a bunch of coins named after that dog because it's following the tailwind of Dogecoin. And the coin that I bought, the Shiba coin, I only threw a couple $100 in there. Weeks before that, if I would have got in, I would have made 600%.
Yeah.
I would have been
jumped.
I could have paid off my Tesla today.
You know what I mean? It jumped.
But then it contracted. And I don't know how. I don't know the rhyme or reason. I don't know why something's contracted and why. It's all artificial to me. Really weird.
I don't
Talk
know.
about Elon Musk. How does he have so much power to just tank the entire crypto industry?
Oh, dude.
How does he have the power to inflate it?
No. So what happened with crypto is China banned it.
That too. I think there's two different things though. I think Elon
that's huge.
Oh, it is.
It's huge.
Elon plays into that too, though, right?
Sure. But he didn't do this.
No.
Not what's happening right now.
I think it's China too.
I mean, think about how many people had to dump.
Yeah, a lot of people dumped, and they're still dumping.
And then, so if all of China has to dump, then people here are going to be scared, and so they dump as well.
Yeah.
And then when they all dump, the value of those coins just naturally go down because now you've taken out a good portion of that value, and you've now dumped all that.
You liquidated it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's China's a big deal. I mean, China's a big portion of the world.
Just to talk about geopolitics. Breaking away from the coin portion, China is the big bad. You know, our parents' generation, when they were worried about the Soviet Union and this great power competition, it's all about China.
Yeah.
All about China. People talk about Russia, it's not Russia.
No,
Russia is contracting. Their population growth is declining. They're not having enough kids. Russia is going to collapse the country. But China is only growing. Their per capita, not the per capita, but their GDP is increasingly growing.
Oh yeah, they're gonna pass us by.
I think they've already passed us.
Did they?
They were number one. And here's a good source. The CIA World Fact Book is published online. You can look it up. And if you get bored, just look at the stats and see where countries are. You can see where country 238 is on the scale of GDP, anything. And you can look at country number one. China's been number one for a couple years now. But I think there's a caveat on why we're still more rich than they are. But their GDP is huge because they're all about business. And they're smart in the sense that they don't do real research and development. A lot of people talk about corporate espionage. They let Americans and other countries do the research and development. They take that idea, they reverse engineer it, and sell it off themselves.
Oh, so China's the Apple of countries.
I guess you could say that. And it's ironic that Apple's also in China.
Dude, Apple's so fucking good at that, though.
Yeah.
They're so
you just wait.
Good at that.
Yeah, because like all of our Android friends are like, well, Android already had that. But it's like no one cares because you want whatever
you
Apple
want
does.
it. Yeah,
even though Apple is late. But that's what China's late on a lot of things.
But
think about militarily, they're late on a lot of things. They just now got an aircraft carrier 5 or 6 years ago. We've had aircraft carriers for decades.
Yeah.
But guess what? They'll have 6 to 7 more very soon. Their military is growing. They already have the world's largest navy. So you can see the writing on the wall. The goal is to be us and then overtake us as far as power goes. Like they don't want to invade the United States. They don't want to take over us. But they do want to be the premier competitor in the world. Open up a map. Look at.
He's seen as that savior.
Yeah. Well, so I don't think it's about the savior part.
Well, I'm saying, but think about it, though, like when people like, it's not necessarily that countries think of the U.S. as the savior, but they do kind of expect us to help.
I think so, but I think that's where China's different.
Okay.
I think China's all about money. They're all about growing themselves. So if you look at the past 20 years, who's been at the forefront of, I use the word liberating countries, helping fighting off the global war of terrorism? It's been us and the greater coalition of European countries and a few other Middle Eastern countries, for example.
Sure.
China hasn't done anything. They sat there and watched. They're not putting themselves into business that they don't really care about. So they're worried about making their money and building alliances across the world. You look at Africa, you look at Latin America, you look at their own region. They're building these relationships, investing so much. But what's going to happen is these countries aren't going to be able to pay. So they're going to default on these loans. And guess what China's going to do? Okay, this is my land now. This is my land now. They're carving out the rest of the world put in front of everyone's eyes and no one's paying attention. China is literally creating this empire. Don't know if it's going to be sustainable because their population is also declining in the next 30 to 40 years. But as of right now, major problem, major threat. And I think we need to get rid of the bullshit that we're focused on. All the minutia, all the small social issues that we're fighting on, who's going to get canceled next, and this and that. The real problem is we're going to not be a global power anymore if we let this other country overtake every industry and become this great entity.
So what do we do?
We outcompete them. And I think the best way is to take advantage of where relationships are, where we're strong at, and try to also leverage new relationships and forge new relationships in their own arena too. Because if we sit here and let, for example, Latin America fall to competition to China, we're going to lose partners, we're going to lose investment opportunities, things like that. We have to outcompete them.
To play devil's advocate, real quick.
Yep.
There's a lot of Trump supporters that would argue that he did a very good job with that.
I think so. Everything, to get political, not everything that Donald Trump did was bad. I think he was a bad person.
I think that's a very important statement.
I think he was a bad person, and I really wish it's going to happen eventually. I think there is going to be a study, like a really decent study of a nameless resume, and it has to be extremely detailed but broad at the same time, so you don't actually know who's who. I don't know if I don't know how to say this. I don't think we were bad as far as how we're doing as a country before the pandemic. So there are a lot of good things that happened while he's president. I'll say that. A lot of good things happened while he was president. But I don't know if he was a good president. But I wonder how things would be. Now, he probably would still be president if he would have got elected in 2017 and chilled the F out.
That's a lot of people's theory. A lot of people's theory is that if you just took away his fucking Twitter and you made him read the prompt and you forced him to read the prompt, he'd probably still be president.
I think so. I think if he would have just played the course and did what Joe Biden's doing, for example, you let your team, first off, don't hire a bunch of idiots. Again, Trump's problem was him being Trump.
Sure.
Don't hire a bunch of weirdos that are on this random ideology. Hire people that are smart and are actual political pundits and know what they're doing. Have those people talk for you. Have those people help you forge your policy instead of using your ego.
Listen to the experts.
Listen to experts. And he came out every 4 months, didn't tweet as much, tweeted happy holidays. Yeah. And if the pandemic didn't happen, he would still be president.
I agree.
I wouldn't have voted for him, but he still would have been president.
Yeah.
So I say all this to say that he did have some really staunch policies against China. Because again,
that's one thing.
China is growing, and we have to compete as a country. If we care about all the small stuff we care about is an issue, but if we care about our country and national security and becoming maintaining the lifestyle that we live, we have to outcompete the other countries. That's just how America is.
Yeah, and it's weird because I feel like as the political climate in the U.S. changes and that kind of American pride becomes more and more frowned upon, I feel like we get less and less away from that kind of stuff, and it's just making us more and more vulnerable.
Yeah, it is. I think when it comes to that, external state actors like China and Russia are playing into that. Misinformation is super easy. We talked about how if you are open on social media, your life is wide open. I can scroll through anybody's social media and see, okay, this person is hella liberal, this person's super conservative. I know where this person's emotional at. If I'm a bad actor, I'm going to friend you, or I'm just going to pump out these stories that are completely bogus and completely harmful to the American environment as far as social environment. And I'm going to pump out these stories and people are going to bite. And because people don't know how to evaluate information and they're good with third and fourth hand information, they're going to take it as gospel. And there you have it. China and Russia won without having to put a missile on our country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think they could tear a country apart with the information. Like, technology is great. Information is great, but it can lead to our demise too, because I don't think people understand how to evaluate information, for sure.
I agree. And I think it makes us vulnerable as a country because we're so focused on yelling at each other within the country that we're, like you said, we're not paying attention to the moves that are going on outside of the country anymore.
Right.
And that could be because COVID shut down international travel, so maybe we're just not thinking too much about other countries in general, or maybe there is issues here that do need to be addressed, so we're not focused on other things as well. But it's always important to, yes, there is important things here, but there's also important things over here as well, and we have to do a good job of addressing both of those.
I think so, and I think it's up to, for example, it's up to for the executive branch to lay out that policy too. I think the executive branch has to say, "Hey, domestically, here are my problems listed out. But here are our foreign policy problems too." And as Americans, you need to understand that these are also some of our issues that we need to focus on. And I think that's why State of the Union addresses, things like that, are important. I don't know if people are watching them, but it's important to lay out your priorities domestically and foreign.
I think everybody's over it, dude.
I think so.
I think people are over this fucking whole political bullshit.
I think November was the culmination of everything. Well, I kind of drug on some shit like January, but I think that was a culmination of, we beat the big bad, everything should be back to normal, and I think people don't care anymore. I think there's still political BS out there, a lot of pundits out there, a lot of drama on news sources, but I really do think that people are just tired of politics.
I think people are exhausted of politics, and I think people are exhausted of this traditional way that we run shit.
I think so.
I think people are tired of the two-party system. I think people are tired of having one president. I think there's just more efficient ways to do it because we still abide by something that was written in the 1700s.
A lot of issues. A lot of things have changed.
Think about everything else that we have allowed to ask, to advance, but yet something so important, we still allow it to be ran by the ideology of something that was written in the 1700s.
There's a lot of this. That's a slippery slope argument, though, because I can get in talking about 1700 policy implemented in today. That's when you can have a Second Amendment argument, for example. But I do think we do need a lot of reform. A lot of reform. And that's not a bad point, right? Even though I do think that. Even though I still don't think that banning guns is ever the answer, because I feel like there's so many different ways there's so many different things that we do need to address. It needs to be harder to get a gun. I think so. But we also have to address that 9 times out of 10 they're on antipsychotics and antidepressants. Like something else is going on. We still have to address that society is just getting pumped pills. Yeah, true. And getting told that they have issues and disorders that every fucking person goes through. Yeah. There's always outliers. Mm-hmm. There's always someone who has just such bad anxiety that they can't get out of bed in the morning. Mm-hmm. I get that. But 9 times out of 10, the anxiety that you feel as a human being, the person next to you feels the equal amount of anxiety as well. They can just handle it better. Right. You either handle it well or you don't handle it well. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that this person has more of an issue than that person. It's just this person has found a way to handle it, or they've found something to help them handle it, whether it's exercise or whether it's waking up in the morning and writing in a journal, or positive affirmations, constantly telling themselves and reminding themselves that they can do it, that they can get that job, that they can do what they want to do. And then the other group that kind of just gives into it. They sit on the couch. They kind of sulk about it. But I do think there needs to be a third party. Not in the sense of that there needs to be antidepressants and drugs and things of that nature. But I think, especially as we've been seeing this last couple of years, mental health is very important. And absolutely. I think recognizing that you may have mental health issues, whether it's depression or anxiety or anything else, I think it's important to recognize that and get help So instead of the pill solution, I think we need more mental health professionals, and we need to not scrutinize people seeking.
Yeah, you shouldn't be going. You shouldn't be going to your general doctor.
Yeah, you shouldn't be going to the general doctor and getting a bottle.
Yeah,
a pill bottle.
Or going to them. Yeah, and going to your general doctor and telling them about depression. That's not the right person to be talking to.
We need more actual therapists, and I think that is the best solution because again, some people do handle things a lot better than others, but some people have issues, and I've realized growing up and talking to people is like some people actually have chemical imbalances. Like me, for example, I'm very positive. I don't feel the same things that some people feel, but sometimes some people can't help it.
But you don't necessarily know that because you don't know how someone else feels, right? We could have the same amount of a level of anxiety.
True.
You just might not feel that you do because you're a very positive person. You're very outgoing. You're very confident. But we talked about that. Confidence is very much a part of doing what you're supposed to do, doing the little things. You have created that confidence because you weren't always like that.
Right.
So that's where it gets tricky because you weren't always this person. Mm-hmm. You weren't always a super confident person like this. You've always been pretty outgoing that I've known you. Mm-hmm. But clearly you've gotten better. Mm-hmm. Right? So what's stopping someone else from getting better?
Yeah, I think
through the same means.
I think some people need. It's a confidence thing.
Oh no, I agree.
Some people need to talk to
someone. Oh no. I don't think there's anything wrong with therapy.
Yeah,
I'm more focused on the pharmaceutical side.
Yeah, I think the pill is not it. Sometimes I think sometimes it gives someone something to lean on.
Yeah,
but it doesn't really fix the problem. It's a band-aid. It's a band-aid.
Like ADHD.
Yeah, I know.
Does everybody fucking need Adderall? No. It's pretty normal to be able to.
A hyper energetic kid.
Yeah.
That doesn't pay attention.
Yeah, like that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
We've created things. We as a society, we save people from themselves often. Mm-hmm. We created the peanut allergy. There was no peanut allergy. There was no peanut allergies before the 70s.
Wow.
We created that. That was created. Like it's been created. And now it's so fucking bad you can't even get peanuts on a plane.
Damn, that's funny. Yeah.
Like that's how bad it is now because there's going to be someone now the percentage is so high that somebody on there is fucking allergic to peanuts.
Wow. And you got to get rid of that liability.
I can't remember the exact story, but it was something along the lines of just people just stopped giving their kids peanuts. And I can't remember exactly why, but then over time it just became created.
Yeah.
And so I have another thing about this too. I think when it comes to people who are overly sanitary. Now this is kind of a tricky one because it's like, ugh, it's so gross, but it's like, okay, let's be realistic for a second.
Yeah.
I think, there's been plenty of times, dude, when being a kid or whatever, just going outside, touching everything.
Right.
And then coming inside and fucking digging your hand in the bag of chips and just eating it without washing your hands.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think there's something to that. Like, I think there's something to doing stuff like that has allowed people to build up a certain amount of immune system.
Yeah.
And I feel like some people destroy it. And I feel like COVID has kind of made that worse as well because everyone's just overly sanitizing.
Well, with that being said, though, I think COVID's changed my mind on a lot of things. Bless you, by the way.
Bless you.
It's changed on a lot of things. And I think we have been a hyper... sanitized population, but also it's work too, because like you said, you've been working for the majority of the pandemic in person, right? I have too. Being hella sanitary, wearing my mask and all that stuff, I haven't caught the cold yet. I always catch colds. Always. So it's like, maybe we're just really gross.
It's different
maybe
for me,
we're
though.
just really gross people. Did you
I never get sick.
Oh, you just don't get
even
sick
before
anyway.
This.
Wow.
Even with going outside and touching bullshit and then going and reaching in the pantry and just eating right out the bag.
Wow.
Like even then I still didn't get sick.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to make a doctor's appointment. I've talked about this before.
That's blessed right there because some people, I don't know, every year, like any of this, the cold doesn't take me out, but it's like, it's a shitty 2 weeks. At the end of the year, it's like I caught a cold.
Yeah.
But this year being overly sanitized, I'm like,
now my allergies get me once a year, and they still got me this year, even with COVID. Yeah,
that's how it is.
So my allergies will get me 1 week out of the year.
Right.
But like actually getting like an actual cold or the flu or the fever, it doesn't I haven't experienced it.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing when it comes to this whole COVID thing about perception. It's just perception. Like I personally, I'm not very worried. Like it has never crossed my mind. I go to HEB every day.
Right.
I'm in HEB every single day. Like it doesn't cross my mind.
Yeah.
Like I've never even thought about it. I've never even thought once about leaving the house and be like, oh fuck, there's a pandemic going on. It's never crossed my mind. Yeah. Like it hasn't. And it's easy for me to say because I don't live with anybody, so I don't have to worry about transmitting it to somebody else.
Right.
And so I can understand that if you live with grandparents or if you live with someone with an autoimmune disease, I can see why you would be a little bit more timid.
Right.
But these fucking 22, 23-year-olds that live by themselves that are fucking screaming at people, put your mask on. It's like, bro,
but
what are you doing?
Though. I think there's a lot of unknown, and I think the stats are
But we know, though. We've known.
Well,
We've known since last year.
We know you might not die if you're younger and healthy, but I think we don't know the lasting effects. Like, there's still people that can't smell. There's still people that are having lung capacity loss. Like,
but you can make that argument for anything. For anything.
It depends, though, because COVID is new, and it's one of those things that it's literally hurting and killing people.
So
I don't know if I'd want to fade that. What I'm saying.
Sure, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. However, though, you can make that argument with a lot of different things, right? And there hasn't been a flu death in a year and a half.
But there's a correlation, though. The masks do work to a certain extent.
But we don't know. Well, okay, that's but to play devil's advocate again, you would assume that certain states probably wear their mask more than other certain states. In Florida, they haven't worn a mask since last year.
Yeah.
Right? And Florida's rates are no higher than anywhere else. So it's when you really sit back and look at some of the things, we can't really determine the effectiveness of mask or no mask or the scariness of COVID or not. Like whether or not it's enough to not go to the movie theater, whether it's enough to not go to the grocery store, because again, the places that have been opened have been no worse off than the places that were closed. So how can we sit here and determine the effectiveness of masks if there was a whole state that said fuck it months ago?
But it's hard to evaluate that
and their rates no higher than anywhere else.
It is hard to evaluate that information though, just because the mask thing is very tricky. It's very tricky, very intricate because when we talk about private companies. So, for example, if Walmart has been saying masks on since May of 2020, and they just now said no mask, that means at least there's not much exposure in Walmart. Now, if every company, which most companies did, have a mask mandate, you're not doing that. So, the only times that you're, for example, a state like Florida that's wide open is at restaurant/bars that are actually bars, you know what I mean? And then outdoor interaction. It makes sense why Florida's numbers, for example, didn't go up because Florida was still very well masked. It's just in public and in other venues you weren't wearing masks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then how do you come? But like for instance, my gym, we never wore a mask ever.
Full of gym, like Gold Gym, or like?
You got like some
niche gyms.
Yeah. Never wore one. Never.
Yeah.
Ever. Wow, and there's 40 people in there working out. We've never wore one since day one, since the start of the pandemic. Yeah. No one caught it. No one.
Jeez.
No one from the gym got sick. So it's really hard to sit here and be like, oh, they were effective. But it's also hard to say that they weren't effective if you wore one the majority of the time. But think about it like that, though. If you wore one every single day and you didn't get it, you would assume it was because you wore the mask.
You assume.
But you can talk to people. You can talk to people, especially here in Texas, who just refused to fucking wear one, who didn't get it either.
Yeah.
So how can you tell that person that a mask is effective when from their eyes, from their perception, from them, for their personal, from themselves, it wasn't effective?
It's tough. I think that's tough. That's tough because it's a matter of you can't change the perspective of people.
And I think that's important, though.
The still there. And I think another thing, too, like last year I was living in San Angelo, West Texas. Not connected to any highway. Globalization has not touched that place. So when the pandemic happened and, it was raging everywhere else in Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Angelo was untouched. We had numbers in the teens for a matter of months. And one could say, see, we're not really wearing masks over here. Everything's good to go. But I think when you have small towns across the country that aren't getting COVID, they're not testing, they're not getting COVID, it gives them the ability to have the perception that, hey, COVID's not that bad. But you also don't live in this metropolitan area. You're not surrounded by a bunch of people. But the moment that COVID actually started to spread, they spiked like crazy. So I say all this to say, maybe the people that walked around maskless for this entire pandemic probably weren't around a bunch of people.
Maybe.
Because if you were around someone that caught COVID, the odds of you catching COVID are pretty high because it's a very infectious disease.
But here in Cedar Park, there's tons of people. And I know plenty of people that just didn't wear one ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
It's tough, man. It's tough.
You know what I mean, though? So it's like, it just goes back to what we were saying, where you're more inclined to believe something that goes with your beliefs.
Yeah.
But when you really step back and think about it, it's just hard to say, because someone who wore one constantly is going to feel that it helped them, that they didn't get sick, especially like you said, you didn't even get a cold.
Right.
You didn't even get a cold this year.
Right.
And it could be because you wore a mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it could just been you didn't get a cold this year.
That's a decent correlation. I mean, it's possible.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then sure, maybe next year you get a cold when the mask thing's gone. Maybe next year you get it. Mm-hmm. Okay. That could be a correlation, right? That could give you some kind of inclination. Be like, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. I wore a mask all year. I didn't get a cold. The next year, I didn't wear it no more. Mm-hmm. And I did get the cold. Okay. Maybe then, right? But I don't think that we can sit here and at this exact moment and be like it was effective or not effective, because there was just so many people who did it and didn't do it.
And the cases still were crazy in the United States.
Yeah.
And it is tough, because you look at Europe too, who are... seem like they're all aboard on how they're handling the pandemic, and they still have spikes. They're still having spikes to this day.
Oh, dude, France got destroyed just a month ago.
Yeah,
destroyed.
So I really don't.
And Twitter will tell you that Europe, everybody wore a mask. There was no assholes over there.
Twitter's
no assholes.
Twitter's a crazy place.
No assholes exist. Only in the U.S. Yeah. Only the U.S. had a population of people who didn't want to wear a mask. Only the U.S.
But then you look at the numbers. It's just wait a minute, Europe is also going crazy. Yeah, and they had very restrictive lockdowns. I mean, you couldn't fly in Europe without doing a 2-week quarantine and then living.
That's why people question all of this.
Yeah.
That right there, that's why.
Yeah.
That's why, because all of these places with strict lockdowns had equal amount of cases as the places that were more open.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody loves the shit on the places that were more open. But dude, look, you can say whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And like we talked about this at dinner, I'll be the first to say I don't, as a man, I don't agree with the abortion thing. Because as a man, it's not my fucking opinion. It's not my fucking place to ever have an opinion on that matter ever. Mm-hmm. And that just what happened with it, I'm still confused on.
Yeah, and you're talking about Greg Abbott and the most recent bill signing.
The bill signing, right? I'm still confused on that, right? Mm-hmm. But prior to that, bro, living here was a blessing. Mm-hmm. Living in this state throughout this entire pandemic is a blessing. I got to go to work.
Right.
I got to work.
You have to make money. At the end of the day, that's what people care about.
Money.
You have to make a living.
I didn't lose my job. Mm-hmm. Most people didn't lose their job here. Most people got to still continue to go to work. Restaurants opened back up pretty quickly.
Yeah, they did.
Bars opened up pretty quickly. Those people got to go back to work. Mm-hmm. Like they didn't, and to shit on that is so weird.
Yeah.
You should be, because you have the choice. You have the choice to go to that bar. Don't fucking go.
That's the funniest thing about it all. You know, with the CDC saying, hey, no more masks if you're vaccinated. And people are like, well, I'm still going to wear a mask. I'm still going to do this. I'm still going to do that. Good for you. Also, if you're outraged about it, stay inside. No one's forcing you, unless your job is forcing you to go to work, but still wear your mask.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day...
But even with the unemployment things, really, no one's even forced to go to work no more.
Yeah.
You can still take COVIDcations. Like, you can, like, even at work, still to this day, we can call work and say, I don't feel good today, and get 2 weeks off.
That's funny. I never heard that term before, COVIDcation. But that's been going on, though.
Yeah. Oh,
I believe it.
COVIDcation all the time, dude. All the time. These are the parts that people don't want to talk about. They don't want to have these discussions. They just want to believe that they took this moral high road, that they continued to do the right thing. And maybe you did. But there's a lot of people that are taking advantage of it. These companies are making billions of dollars off of this.
I believe it.
People are taking COVID-cations. People are riding this unemployment train.
And I've heard talking points too, and I haven't verified it, but I'm hearing a lot of teachers are riding this COVID thing out because they also don't want to go to work.
Yeah.
They're like, if I can do my job from Zoom 3 days of the week, that's why they were protesting a lot. Because even though the kid transmission rate was extremely low and it wasn't affecting them too much, teachers and teacher unions were like, we don't want to go to work. It's not safe. Moral high ground. But it makes you think, people not really want to go to work. You know what I mean? It makes you think about some of these things too.
I mean, there's people who feel that kids lost a whole year of school this year.
I think that, again, the pandemic, we're not going to see how really crazy the pandemic
until about 5-10 years from now.
Yeah, we're going to see, because like there are kids that lost an entire year. So it's going to be a snowball effect. A lot of these kids are going to miss out on things because they didn't get a full education.
Yeah. Because some schools did it right. Some schools set it up in a fashion where it was better than others, right? Mm-hmm. Versus some schools, for whatever fucking reason, some schools had half the kids in the class and half the kids on Zoom.
Yeah.
What a terrible idea. Like,
but I think it was a parent issue too, though. I think it was up to parents. COVID was just a bad year, man.
It's just crazy.
Think about.
But I don't think it had to be that bad. I think so many things were just aspirated. I don't know if it had to be that bad.
We just don't know, because we talked about the number. 500,000 people died, so it's like, it's hard to say. You know what I mean?
It is hard to say.
There's always the question of what if. What if we just said F it from May 2020 on? And do we lose 7,500,000 people? Do we lose 1 million people in America? Like, how many people do we actually lose if we say F it?
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? How
but it's
much
not even
that
saying,
number contract if we say
but it's not saying
lock down forever?
It's not saying F it.
I know.
It's saying, let's do this logically.
With choices.
Okay. Because the whole restaurant thing, there's no logic to it.
No, if you
there's no logic. There's no logic to it. Okay,
yeah.
I shouldn't have to walk through the front door at the hostess sign with my mask on, and then sit down and be like, "Oh, mask free," and then have a server come up and talk to me with their mask on. Like that shouldn't. There's no logic there.
Yeah.
There's no logic. So it wasn't a matter of just saying F it, let's just do whatever the fuck we want. That's not what it was.
With that analogy, though, maybe
that's not what it is.
It's a matter of choice that I can take my mask off in my small bubble, but I don't want to walk through everyone's bubble maskless. Maybe we're all
on the same. We're on the same enclosure with the AC blowing, and this is a disease that's airborne.
I get it.
It just doesn't make any sense.
I just don't know. I just don't know how we do it. And what we didn't get a chance to expand on at dinner is like, the pandemic is not over. It's not declared over, but it's on its last leg. You know what I mean? Corona's losing.
Yeah, it's done.
What I'm afraid of, because in our lifetime we've seen at least 5 or 6 weird scenarios where you had bird flu, H1N1, swine flu. One of those are probably the same. You had Ebola outbreak and all this stuff.
We also had the SARS. SARS-19 was.
Oh,
that's the first COVID.
Well, SARS-19 is COVID.
Well, yeah, but SARS.
SARS is SARS. SARS and MERS have happened a couple times as well. So, like, all that stuff happening has always happened. So what the hell happens the next time? If there is a weird outbreak in Southeast United States, are we going to freak out and go into lockdown pandemic mode off the rip? Because that's what I don't want. The bird flu, SARS, H1N1, it affected a lot of people, but it wasn't like this. But I wonder if governments are going to, to err in caution, we're going to go super lockdown anytime there's any type of outbreak ever. I wonder if that's what's going to happen in our future.
Man, I don't know, because I think there's so many people who have realized that we kind of fucked this up. There's a reason why people are moving to Texas on an alarming rate.
I think we did fuck it up, but I think we could have done a lot better
at fucking it up.
No, I think we did a lot better at mitigating the loss and mitigating the.
I don't know, because how?
I think if I was to replay it all and I knew everything, right, and I had a line to the president in January 2020, I would say no more flights ever.
Oh yeah, the flights should have. The flights probably should have been the first thing shut off.
But how do you stop it though? Seeing how this pandemic has spread, and once it hit the United States, it started spreading, like it hit Washington, and then shit spread like wildfire. How do you fix it? I really don't know what would be next even if I went back in the past. I don't know how to stop it, because it would be spreading like wildfire. It would trickle in the United States some way somehow.
Yeah. I mean, stopping it probably wasn't going to happen, right? And mitigating it, maybe we could have mitigated it more. But I think like we said, the initial shutdown made perfect sense. We had to flatten the curve of hospitalizations. It was just getting out of control. The hospitals couldn't keep up. We were losing beds.
Right.
Hospital capacity was just up to the max.
And before you keep going, maybe that's what it is too. Maybe. So here's two things. COVID was deadly for like 55 or 65 and older. But maybe it was the hospitalization issue. It's the medicine and the ventilators. That was the issue. And if you didn't have the medicine and ventilator, you're probably going to pass away. Because think about how many old people got COVID last year and survived. Rich old people I'm talking about. The president got COVID, and people are like, well, according to the statistics, you're telling us that he's going to pass away. Mm-hmm. But he didn't. Yeah. And you know why? Because he had access to the world's greatest, medicine and hospital system ever. You know what I mean? He had all access to everything, so he survived. So I wonder if we're onto something there. Flattening the curve and keeping the hospitalizations down throughout the first 3 or 4 months, maybe we've been better off on the death side. Maybe more people, maybe the same amount of people that caught COVID to an extent, but the hospitalizations would have been down, the seriousness of COVID would have been down, and then we would have been able to ease through the pandemic. Yeah,
I can see that because I think the amount of people who caught it, I don't know if we could have changed that. Because there's still half the country that's shut down strict as fuck. And there was a part of the country, or there was a good portion of the country that didn't shut down as strict. Yeah. But the cases were still equally as high in super strict or not strict. So I don't know that we could have changed how many people caught it. Maybe we could have changed how many people have died. Mm-hmm. But also we have to take better care of ourselves in this country. We have to. This was a disease that primarily killed people who weren't in the best health. Yeah. And that should be an eye opener. Yeah, and it gets me to segue into certain things too, right? I didn't realize how unhealthy of a country we were until I really got into fitness and I got in a really serious cut. Biggest cut in my life. So the most recent study, sorry, not to cut you off, but the most recent one, I pulled it up in Philip's podcast. I think we're at 72% overweight. And that's going to help. That's helping my point right there, Did a serious cut. I dieted the right way. I learned how to diet. It's literally math. Oh, yeah. Calories in, calories out. What is your metabolic rate? How many calories do you need to burn to sustain? And then you do over or under if you want to gain or lose. Super simple. To do that, though, to be the most accurate, you have to buy a scale. You have to look at every single serving size. You have to understand what you're consuming, track it, and things like that. I was so pissed when I realized what a serving size, for example, cereal was. Oh, dude. Our whole lives we eat facts. 2 or 3 bowls of cereal. Yeah. A serving of cereal is 30 grams. Yeah. For 160 calories. Yep. When I consume cereal, I probably eat 160 grams of cereal. Yeah. So I just had a 600 calorie meal of fucking cereal plus milk. Yep. And you got nothing nutritious from it. Nothing. And just 600 and 600 calories for most people is a third of their day. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like when I learned how we consume things, because like the chart doesn't lie. It tells you exactly what you're doing, but we just live differently. We eat 10 times the serving size as humans or as Americans. That's why we have an obesity problem. We don't actually eat to the serving size. Well, there's also to a restaurant. I don't want to get a serving. I want the biggest fucking plate possible. Yeah. So you're gonna eat 1,800 calories in one meal. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And to not to completely blame people for being overweight. There is definitely a lot of lack of information, especially in certain areas. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're in lower income areas. There's definitely a lack of information. Mm-hmm. And definitely lack of access. Lack of access. You don't have a Whole Foods or Aldi's to where you can buy this stuff. And that's another thing. When I was dieting, the cheapest shit was the most unhealthy food ever. Bag of chips is $1.99. Always. But spinach is $4.99. Always. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a matter of those things. Like when you are living in a low income area or you're low income yourself, it's hard to diet and eat healthy because it's so much cheaper to buy the shit food. Yep. And that's another thing. I don't know how we fix it, but but think about it. This all goes full circle. Mm-hmm. This is why people go down those conspiratorial rabbit holes. Because this all goes full circle. This disease killed people who are majority unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And then the majority of people are unhealthy because it's cheaper to be unhealthy. The average income of the United States is like $26,000.
Yeah, and I think because you think medium for household is like 55. So yeah. Yep.
So makes sense. Yeah, it's right around 27,000.
Yeah.
So that's not, you can't live off of that. You definitely can't eat a full, rich, nutritious diet like that.
No, not at all.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, yeah, you can eat a bunch of chicken.
Yeah, exactly. You can. Chicken and rice and spinach, but again, no one wants to eat that. You know,
over and over and over and over and over again. It's tough.
Yeah, it is.
Right? It's tough. It's easy. And this is the other half of it. It's easy to get the bad stuff too, even if it is more expensive. Mm-hmm. I mean, ordering pizza is definitely not very cheap. Or getting
no, it is cheap actually. That's the funny thing.
Well, I guess I guess it can be. Yeah,
they can feed 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, that is true.
Think about that. Think about when you're going on a date and you spend $60-$70 at some random restaurant, but then you order pizza for $7 or $14, and it's like, damn, I just fed both of us, and we have 2 slices left over.
We got leftovers.
So
yeah, I mean,
think about that. Pizza, that is true. Unhealthy foods are cheap. That is true. McDonald's is cheap.
I guess, yeah. I guess maybe I was thinking of better quality of unhealthy foods, but I guess when you think about it, like Little Caesars, $5 hot and ready.
You can feed a family of 6. If you live in an impoverished neighborhood and you have a family of 6, Little Caesars makes life so much easier.
Absolutely.
It's $14 to feed the whole family.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
super unhealthy though, but it gets the job done.
Yeah, it's interesting. How did we get here? Like, how did we get to this point? Like, how did things go so sideways?
I think when this is where money, I think that's just how society, like literally how society is when you have monetary value in things. I think whenever there was a concept of money or wealth in society, this could have been 10,000 years ago, someone was going to be elite. And I think greed plays a factor into it. And once money is a factor, there's going to be elite, and the elite want to stay elite forever. So you trickle down. You trickle down the money to everyone else. And because some people don't have the opportunity to become elite, you're stuck in this cycle, and you're in these little cycles. And then you look at America and you look at where populations are at, and you look at the little cycles here, but you look at people that are growing there. A lot of social economic stuff going on there.
Yeah, and to speak on that, I took a social diversity class my junior year of college. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I remember specifically was that he was showing us a chart of generations who jump social economic classes. And it was something like 1% of generations jump a social. 1% of kids make more than their parents. Mm-hmm. Like that, they jump that next income bracket. They might make a little bit more, but to jump that next income bracket, it was somewhere between like 1 to 4%. It was it was a small number, mm-hmm. Small number. And then when you start to think about it, though, sadly, it kind of makes sense because that's information usually. Mm-hmm. That information that's being passed down from somebody else, and the advantages that you get from also being born into that family, right? It's both things.
Look at Kylie Jenner. She became a billionaire, and I'm not saying that she wasn't self-made, but it's easy to become a millionaire. It's easy to become a billionaire when you're already a millionaire at age 5.
Oh man,
you can easily invest.
I'm gonna push back on that one though.
Well, hear me out though.
Because again, that goes against what we just said. Because think about the tax bracket. I mean, think about the income disparity that she just broke.
Yeah.
They went from a millionaire, right? Because mm-hmm. I mean, Caitlyn Jenner was a lawyer.
No. That's it. He was an Olympian.
Okay, an Olympian.
Kim Kardashian's mother, I'm blanking on her name, Kris Jenner, was married to Rob Kardashian, who was a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
So they were thousandaires, maybe millionaires at the time because they did OJ.
Yeah.
She married Caitlyn Jenner afterwards.
Okay.
But then the whole Kardashian thing blew up.
Yes.
Become multimillionaires, and then now they're
to jump to $1 billion is crazy.
It is crazy.
It is crazy because think about like Jay-Z. You can't to say that him becoming a billionaire isn't self-made because he became a famous rapper. It's kind of
no, because he was definitely self-made.
Well, what do I mean though is like he was a millionaire from being a rapper. He could have very well just stayed a millionaire.
Right.
But then he became a billionaire.
But what happens with that? So I say that just to say, when you're a thousandaire, it's very hard to invest and become a millionaire. It's really hard. And if you do it, it takes 40 years investing in a 401k that's stable.
Yeah.
When you already have $10 million in your reserves, investing a couple million into a brand, I can see how you can jump classes when you have millions to invest. You have six zeros to invest versus 3.
I've listened to a lot of people talk about this though. I've listened about people. Okay, so a lot of people say going from 6 figures to 7 figures is pretty easy. 7 figures to 8 figures a little harder, but going from 8 figures to 9 figures is ridiculous.
It is. It's exponential.
That's what, and so so that's why I still think what Kylie Jenner managed to do is still impressive.
I think so too, because again, like the way you broke it down, that is impressive. Because $1 billion, I mean, there's only so many billionaires out there.
$1 billion is crazy.
It is crazy, but I think that it's
because you could give us $1 million, we may never have the smarts or the drive to turn it into $1 billion.
No, right? I don't even know if I'd be able to flip it to $10 million.
Because you can make that. Because you can. I just think that's kind of a cop out. Because think of it like this, right? You could make the same argument for us. We do decent for our age, and we do decent compared to the average, right? But someone maybe, it's not to say that someone like Jay-Z could take our amount of income and find a way to make it into $1 million, because he proved that he could, because he started even lower than we did,
right?
And then he turned it into $1 million,
right?
So it's almost a cop out when you were like, oh, well, it's easy if you start with $1 million to make $1 billion. No, I don't think so.
You're right.
Because we can start because someone could make the same argument that it's easy to go from 1,000 to $1 million. Like there might be somebody who is self-made who's like, dude, I could show you how to go from 1,000 to $1 million. We see those YouTube videos all the time. Yeah. People have done it.
Those are pipe dreams.
But people have done it though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like people have done it just like she did it, but not everybody who's a millionaire has become a billionaire.
Yeah, maybe I should caveat that it's easier to do it when you have the amount of money to invest.
I don't disagree.
I don't think it was easy for her to do it. Of course, it wasn't easy, because if that was the case, all the millionaires would become billionaires in a matter of years.
Yeah.
She found a product. Again, everything she did with her money was smart. I just think it's easier to become a billionaire when you have that much capital to invest.
Sure. And I don't even know that I don't necessarily disagree. I just think that it's just like, I don't know. I'm just always curious. I'm like, because I always feel like, and I know that you can probably relate to this. I always feel like I could be doing more. I always feel like I could be doing more.
Yeah.
And you can be doing more because you hear stories of people who are doing more. You hear those stories of those people who just put their last dollar into something because they believed in it so much, and then it blew up.
Yeah.
Taking that risk, like overcoming that fear, like you hear those stories, and so I always feel like I can do more. So I try to never think that way, and maybe it's right or wrong. I just personally try not to think that way. And we were talking about this, so this is fuck it, I'm gonna talk about it. This is an interesting one. So I have a theory on why there are people who dislike African Americans. Okay, stick with me on this one.
Oh yeah.
So I've talked about this before. I think people are kind of resentful because Black people are good at a lot of things.
Right.
Really good at a lot of things. We see it in sports. We see now we're starting to see more and more Black people flourish in tech and YouTube and Twitch in
entertainment.
Not even just entertainment, not even just sports, just every aspect. You see more and more black CEOs. Mm-hmm. You see more and more black business owners. And we were talking about this at work. I think that state of mind is harmful to the black community. That the white privilege thing. Stick with me. I'm not discounting that. I'm not. Mm-hmm. But hear the whole thought out. So I think that teaching people or teaching young black kids that there is a such thing as white privilege is almost detrimental, because y'all are equally as talented, if not more talented. We see it every day. Mm-hmm. We see it. There's no such thing as a white LeBron James. Right. There's not. Right. We see it in the UFC. The UFC is now completely ran by African Americans and Africans all across every division. Kamaru Usman, Francis Ngannou, Israel Adesanya. Right. There is belt holders who are all from Africa, or of African descent, and I feel like we have to. I think we got to be more. I think we have to flip. I think we have to like understand that there is that privilege, but I think we have to kind of flip the narrative and start telling people, no, you can't. Like, tell them that they can do it. Mm-hmm. Instead of like telling them like, oh man, it's going to be against you. This is going to be against you. Tell them, no, fuck that. No, you can do it, because they can. Like, they can do it. Right. They're clearly talented enough. They're clearly smart enough. I mean, Nigeria is one of the smartest countries in all of the world. Right. Easily. They're one of the most technologically advanced.
So I hear you on that. I hear you on that. I think also the reason why you see a lot of black people in power, a lot of black people, and I'm not just talking about like physical stuff, but like they're doing great in tech.
Yeah, just anything.
I think a lot of it is because of capability and drive, but not to say that, because I do believe that there is a sense of white privilege in it. And it's not as if that, hey, you're a white guy, so you immediately get a job.
I'm not right. I'm not saying that doesn't exist.
For sure. But I think that, I don't want to say that it helps drive us, but it helps us stay sharp. Yeah. If that makes sense. So it's like, and whether it's true or not, you think that, okay, I'm competing with white America, right? So to compete, to be equal, at least seen equal by the bosses or whoever, to be seen as equal and to outcompete, I have to be on top of my shit. I have to be 3 times better than the competition. Yeah. Because I have XYZ things rooting against me. And again, all this could be artificial. You know what I mean? You could say racism is real and extremely systematic, or it couldn't, or it might not be, but you don't really know who you're working with behind closed doors. So I think knowing that, I think that does help drive people. So I think having the narrative saying like, hey, the white man's a boogeyman, for example, and this person's always out to get you is negative. And I think having a positive reinforcement is important. But I also think that understanding that there are class issues going on in America. And if you're not on top of your game, you may lose because this white boss may pick someone he's more comfortable with. Yeah. And I think that's where it goes. So I don't think... You know what I mean?
I can't remember exactly how we worded it. I was having a conversation with somebody and we worded it so... Like there was a... Man, I probably butchered it to a little bit, but it was something along like... Like it had to go back to... So what we briefly talked about dinner, how they found Egyptian remains like in the Grand Canyon, how there's certain historians and certain researchers who believe African Americans or Africans were already here, that they were here first, and that there's not a lot of that's more so what it was. There's not a lot of history written about that. And he was also talking about how African kings helped the Roman Empire during the bubonic plague, during the plague, how they helped them with running water. They helped them establish these things. That came from Africans. Like Africans did that.
There's a lot. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of history, and I think where you're going is maybe it's not where you're going, but as Black people and people of African descent, there are a lot more stories to be told that are positive and uplifting.
Yes. Okay. So
and
that
the black community is, and I can't speak for the entire black community, but I think I'm on point when I say that we're tired of black trauma.
I've seen you talk about this.
We're tired of black trauma, and this might not be where you're going.
This kind of ties into it because that's what I was getting at. It's when I was saying, like, I think the narrative. I think tell your kid that no, man, we helped out the white people. Like, we helped them survive. Like, we did this. We were like, tell those stories. Tell your kid that they can be whatever the fuck they want, regardless that they're black or regardless that they're a different race or whatever it is. And just tell them, man, like, you can do it. Like, you can do it. Like, keep empowering them.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes we get away from, I feel like sometimes there can be I feel like sometimes we can be trying to do that, but sometimes it can get spun in a negative way where it's just like, fuck it, man, I can't do this because the white dude got the job or whatever it is.
We should never let that happen. You know what I mean? That is the most negative thing that a person could say to themselves. You know what I mean? Regardless of your race, but as a black person, I feel like you have to be strong. You know what I mean? And again, you can't revert to, oh, I didn't get this because I'm black and that person's white. That might be the case, right?
It could be the case, right? It definitely could be the case.
You don't know what's happening behind closed doors. You don't know
but
what people's
I feel like
are.
Thinking like that is
going to be to your
counterintuitive or counterproductive. Yeah.
And then it goes back to the very beginning of this whole podcast. It's like controlling what you can control and being the best that you can be. Because then, if that organization actually is racist and they're prejudiced and they're picking who they want to pick based off of skin color, you don't want to work there anyway.
Absolutely. So
it's like, you know what? I know I'm hot shit. Some other corporation is going to want me. I'm going to go to their competition. I'm going to be great there, and they're going to wish that they had me.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be.
I love that. That's how it is. That's how it should be. We're so busy on trying to fix or change someone's thought process. You just can't. You can't fix that corporation. If that's what they want to do, then that's what they're going to do. And you can't necessarily fix that. Like, you can't change that person hiring's perspective. Like, you can't change that person into them hiring a more diverse cast. Like, you can't do that. Go find that company that is more diverse. Like, why would you even want to work there anyways? Why even why even continue to give that energy? Like, even like trying to change it or take them down or whatever it is.
Right.
Like, what do you why? Like, that, you can't change that person's thought process. Why? You don't even want to work there anyways. Like, you don't want to work there. It seems like an awful place to work. Go find that place that is going to accept who you are.
Yeah, but I think here's a devil's advocate there, though. Not to say that you want to work in somebody's corporation that doesn't want you, because that sounds miserable. But I think there's something to say that you're breaking barriers. And I think, for example, in today's age, we're still seeing first black female executive, black. You're still seeing first in 2021. Sure. So I think there's something to say of a person of color breaking a barrier. So I think it's symbolic in that sense.
But into a company that is not a good company to work for anyways?
I think it comes from the idea of being able to change it. You know what I mean? It's like, if I can break through and get to the ranks, I can change this company. I can not own this company, but I can manage this company and change it for the better.
Maybe so.
So I think that may be the perspective, you know what I mean? But again, it goes about putting the best product forward anyway. Again, if I have the best resume and I know I gave you the best GPA, the most qualified, I got all my certs, did well in the interview. If you don't want me, I may be inclined to think that there's something wrong with you guys, or the competition was just that much better. But I am not going to blame race. You know what I mean? And we should not have to revert to blaming that, and instead of just being the best that we can be. And if that's who they're going to be, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Take my talents elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. It's all tricky, man.
It is.
And it sucks that we're still dealing with even issues like this anyways.
I know. I thought our life would be a lot different. I think our parents thought our life would be different.
Yeah.
I really did think that we would be moving forward, because I feel like we were on path to move forward. But I really do think these past 7, 8 years of the media, social media growing, I think people became a lot more polarizing, and I think a lot of issues turned into black and white things. I really do think it all started with the Michael Brown killing in 2014, and that's when Black Lives Matter really came out. But then the counterculture of Black Lives or of like Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter came about. Instead of everyone being solid and understanding like, hey, stop killing us, or let's hear why these people are mad. It's like, let's create counterculture.
Yeah.
And then that counterculture grew up into this major situation where we're extremely polarized. We go from our first black elected president to, Donald Trump, and then we become split big time. And now everything's about race again. You know what I mean? And we weren't supposed to go that direction.
Yeah. I mean, Morgan Freeman always said, like, the only way to stop racism is to stop talking about racism. And it's always interesting because maybe we shouldn't, I don't know that you shouldn't talk about it, but I do feel like you were saying, sometimes we give too much value to certain people.
We do.
We give too much value to certain people.
Yeah.
Like let that person over there be a fuckface.
Right.
Why even allow, why give them that power? Like, why
give them
that
by amplifying it?
Yeah, why give them that value? Like, they're obviously scum of the earth. If they believe that way, or if they use certain words, or if they use certain slurs, if they believe that way or they talk that way, they're obviously pieces of shit.
Right.
Why empower them by getting upset? And I guess and maybe that's super easy of me to say as a white person or a white male. Maybe that's easy for me to say because I don't know what it feels like to be called that word. Like, I don't know what that's like. So maybe that's easy for me to say.
I don't know. It depends. It depends on what the racism is, right? Because, honestly, I laugh at it. Like if someone was a white supremacist in my face, I would laugh at them. It's like, you're impressed about something that you don't even know who I am. And I actually might be doing way better than you in life, but you think you're more supreme. It's like, all that stuff is comical to me. But yeah, I try not to give that stuff energy. But what Morgan Freeman said, I don't know when he said this quote, but...
And maybe it was just something that got passed around. I don't know.
But it's very interesting to think about. Do we stop racism by not talking about it? I don't know, because we're talking about it a lot more, and it's not ending.
Yeah, but like you said, it seems like we restarted talking about it, where there maybe was a point in time where it wasn't as big of a topic, and maybe that doesn't necessarily mean that things were better or worse. Maybe it just means that we just weren't talking about it.
Because we were focused on something else. And it makes you think, and this is another segue, I don't know if we need to go this deep, but I think, so about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think the president had a State of the Union, and people were, and I think Kamala Harris might have talked about something too, and then Senator Tim Scott, a Republican, talked about this, but they were talking about if America is a racist country. And I think it's safe to say that America is built off of racism, right? It's built off racism. We've had wars about owning slaves and things of that nature, right? But also, is America running off hate in general? So you talk about, there's this period where we didn't seem like there's major race issues. So thinking about post 9/11 up until 2007, and during the Obama presidency, it just didn't seem that bad. That could be me being ignorant as young, or being a young ignorant person not understanding what's going on around me. Or could it be that we're so worried about the big bad elsewhere that we don't have time to focus on domestic social issues? So do you think America thrives off of hate and division? Or is it something greater than that? You see what I'm getting at? So I think we weren't really big on the whole racist. Again, I don't know. Maybe I was naive to it because I was young. But it seems so much more amplified these past 6 or 7 years than it was before then. And I wonder if before then we were actually in a war and people are afraid that our sovereignty was going to be encroached on by terrorists. So people were still racist and still prejudiced against people, but it just wasn't black people. It's like people were prejudiced against a certain group of people and they weren't focused on something else.
That is true, because there was definitely a lot more Middle Eastern hate during that time. Right.
And not to say, and I'm not saying any of it is right, but I'm thinking that America focuses on one thing at a time, and there's maybe correlation with COVID and everything, potentially originating in China. Then you have these Asian hate crimes, you know what I mean? So it makes you think about, does America just need somebody to hate? And periods of time, it goes from, the myriad of people that's populating America, and it's like they find a reason to hate other people. So it makes you wonder, And we say all this to get to a talking point of where does racism ever end in this country? And I don't know if it does. If you look back at our history,
but does it ever end everywhere though? I've been to other countries. It's not necessarily better anywhere else.
No, it's not. And it's funny because Twitter would make you think that Europe is this utopia, but
Europe
is also very racist to people of color.
Yeah, I've seen it. I mean, Italy and Spain are no better.
No, not even in Europe. Obviously, not even the UK. You know what I mean?
No.
UK, they still are racist towards Black people, Pakistanis. You know, they are still elements of racism. And then throughout the Arab Spring and a lot of, Arabs are fleeing their countries going into Europe, you've seen a lot of nationalist movements in those countries too. I think humans are sometimes inclined to hate people. So I don't know if we'll ever get past that stuff.
I think that's something right there, because I think people are more inclined to hang out with people who are more similar to them. I don't think that it's always normal to have, like, I don't know that for everyone that it's normal for them to have a bunch of different friends of all races.
So it goes back down to the micro level of tribalism. Like, humans are tribal people.
Yeah.
And you are part of your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, we're talking in a lot of circles too. But it's like, you talk about being tribal, America is this melting pot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we should have been American tribal the whole time, and we should have never been split after we got past the bullshit of obviously of the slavery era, past 1964 and the Civil Rights Act, so on and so forth. There had to be a point in time where we melded together, right? But it seems like there hasn't been that point in history. I feel
like around 9/11 there was much more, it was much more acceptable to have like a American pride. Like, I think like 4th of July was still a really big
after
deal.
9/11. I mean, I feel like 4th of July, personally, I feel like 4th of July has been one of my favorite holidays my whole life until, and to me, I think a lot of things got co-opted. And this is another segue, but I feel like a lot of things that got co-opted over the past couple years, for example, because like the old hyper patriot people were Trump supporters, and like, I don't want to be like like that.
Yeah,
just a lot.
But I think what
things.
you said though is important. I think we should be tribal. We should be Team America. Like, we should be tribal. Like, we should be tribal to Americans. Like,
as long as it doesn't mean racist. You know what I mean? As long as it doesn't mean negative stuff.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, like in its own, like at its very core level. We should be tribal American. We should be. Like, we should all. Weird. Like, we should.
I think we all interpret America as different things too. That's another thing too. I think when you had the hyper nationalist crowd of the past couple of years, they're pro America, but I think they see America in a different light, or they wanted America to be in a certain time. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe we're doomed socially.
I think we should be pro America. That this country that we're proud of, that there are millions and millions of different types of people that live here. There in the land where you can truly do anything.
Yeah.
And like, we still have to, I think we got to get back to that. Like, we still got to get back to the fact that we still live in a country where we don't get beheaded for having these conversations.
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of positives about being American. There really are. Our history is fucked. But you know what I mean? It's really fucked.
But everybody's history is fucked.
It is. Our history's fucked. You know what I mean?
Think about Genghis Khan, for instance.
Oh, like all those eras where people are conquering, and
or I think like I think it's something along the lines of 50 or 60 I think there's a large percentage of that population that lives on that side of the world that has his genes, because he was just
pillaging,
just going through.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of crazy.
It is.
And just, I mean, I feel like it's not that our history isn't exponentially bad, because it is. But when you look across history just of human beings, everybody has done something that is just not. It's just not good. Like, it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen.
It just makes you think, and these are conversations that we'll never find a solution, because if it was easy, it would have been fixed already.
Right.
But I think our history is like what makes us great but it's also like the bane of our existence. You know what I mean? I feel like we're always going to have this animosity as a country. Where
I think the mistelling of our history is the issue.
And I don't know if that's fair to say. I don't know how our history is.
But I'm saying like parts that have been left out. Like as we were talking about just a couple minutes ago, as we were talking about like African kings who helped the Roman Empire survive, or potentially there was Africans already here,
right,
before the slave trade,
right,
and how could they be so technologically advanced, but yet never left Africa, like never sailed anywhere? Like how could they be in the Caribbeans but didn't make it to North America? Like that just doesn't seem likely. Like, how did they make it there, but they didn't just go a little bit further and hit this ginormous landmass?
I'm not sure.
You know what I mean? Like, of course they were here. They had to have been. And then now that they're finding remains of them, remains of Egyptians in the Grand Canyon, and there was one other place on the southeast. I can't remember exactly which state, but there was one other place here that they have found Egyptian remains. Those kinds of stories, like,
I'm gonna have to look into that.
I'll send you the clip.
Okay.
Those kind of stories that have been left out of history, that has made a race seem less important or less adequate to another race, which just clearly isn't the, like, when you think about it technically, like, Middle Easterns and Africans, like, they've been here, y'all have been here the longest. Like, white people, all it is that Africans moved north where there was less sun, and then the skin changed.
That's what I say, it all started there.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So y'all have been here the longest. So to sit here and tell stories, or sit here and to believe that y'all are less adequate or lesser in any means is obviously just, that's fucking nonsense.
Right.
It's just not possible.
Right.
How can you be on Earth longer than someone else and be lesser? Like that, it's not really possible.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, like the mistelling of history. Like those stories should be told too. Like y'all should get as much praise as y'all deserve, just as anything else. Like,
I think so, and I think Black history, for example, when you talk about it, should be way more than what is taught. Our history shouldn't start in 1603. You know, our history shouldn't start in 1600.
And nobody should be jealous of it.
Yeah,
like it should be cool. It should be cool to know that an Egyptian king saved the Roman Empire. Like that's cool. It's cool because that's an African race helping a non-African race. That is a story that should be told because that's promoting like us together. Like that's promoting that theory, like that thought process. That's promoting us to come together, that they were able to help each other at that time.
Right.
Or just anything like that. I feel like those kinds of things just bring us together versus history being told in a manner that makes y'all feel like y'all were lesser.
Well, that's just America. I think that's America in this nutshell. You know, all of our history starts in the 1600s and then on the 1775 and things of that nature. I think when it comes to American education system and it comes to telling history, I think you do need to tell the full story. You're right. I think
because I can see how you could be a young African American kid reading this, as you said, your history starts in the 1600s and immediately being slaves. And immediately thinking, I can't accomplish anything in life.
And I hope that's not the case. I really hope people aren't reading that.
But I could see how that could happen, though. Especially if you are in a lower income area, where you are seeing a bunch of unfairness, or maybe your parents work 3 or 4 jobs, or maybe you live in a really bad neighborhood, or whatever it is. And then you read this history. I could see how that could be a potential thought process. You're like, damn, like, I don't know if I can accomplish anything more than what I'm seeing right now.
I think when it comes to that, I think the history needs to be amplified. I think when you're talking about the kid living in the now and seeing what's around them is important to say. But I think the solution beyond that is more than just history. I think the history should provide that, instill that pride, but I think there also need to be more positive role models too. I think athletes and musicians are great role models, but I think we need more role models. We need more. I think we need more role models, if that makes sense. Like LeBron could be the biggest role model in the world. Barack Obama could be the biggest role model in the world, but we're not all going to be 6'8", hyper athletic basketball players. We're not all going to be super eloquent, charismatic, lawyers turned politicians. So we need more local role models. And I think that's where the whole systematic thing comes into play. I think we should have more black principals and black city council members and things like that. So that way, even the kids that live in these areas, you get flushed in with better talent. You have better teachers, better principals, and they say, hey, that person is very eloquent. He's a good leader. I want to be just like him. And I think that's how we change the tide as far as systematic things, among other things as well. I think there needs to be community investment, things of that nature too. There needs to be
But I see what you're saying, though.
Yeah, there needs to be like black gentrification. Gentrification happens, but usually that means kicking out poor people and they have to go back to the hood again.
So we were talking about that today. We were talking about that yesterday. That's happening in Austin right now.
Possibly hell of
that's happening to white people, and white people are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so I thought how ironic that was. Jeffrey and I were talking about this the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is what happens.
Yeah.
You're experiencing it on a grand scale because now houses are $550,000 versus maybe houses going from $50,000 to $100,000. Maybe it wasn't as ginormous of an increase or as ginormous of a difference in those areas, but it was enough to make people have to move even further out. And that's what's happening right now. People are having to move further and further and further out.
That's the problem with Austin. People are like, where are the black people in Austin? It's like, well, everything's been gentrified. So black people are now living in Pflugerville, Round Rock, Cedar Park, getting pushed way out because of that. And like you said, it's happening to everyone now.
Yeah, now it's everyone. Yeah.
And I think when it comes to the black community, we need black gentrification. Like just because a Starbucks comes to the hood doesn't mean that it needs to be a white area now. It's like, no, you can have a Starbucks, you can have nice things in the hood and just gentrify it. Have nicer facilities and keep it within the community. That's how you make things better. And instead of kids having to resort to doing bad things, whether it's getting drugs, gangs, or whatever the case may be, now you have a rec center that's free for a certain population. Now you can go play basketball every day, or you can go do this, you can go get extra learning. I think that's how you kind of cure some of the systematic stuff as well. So I think to bring it back full circle, a lot of it can come to your history and understanding your full history, having those positive role models, and then having that community investment. So I think if I ever was a politician, or if I ever had the ear of a politician, I'd say, this is how you get the black community or the impoverished community in general back to speed. You have to have that legislation that builds on all of those factors, I think.
No, I like it.
Yeah, man.
I like it. That's a good place to end. We did 3 hours.
3 hours?
Yeah.
Jeez. It's good time.
It goes by quick, man.
Yeah, it does.
It goes by real quick. So tell everybody... so we like to end it on goals, and you like you said, you're a goal-oriented person. Give me 2 business goals and 2 life goals.
Goals?
Yeah, that you're looking to.
So I think I wanted to invest up to 8% of my personal income into either stocks or savings.
Okay.
And I'm still meeting that.
Okay.
As far as another business goal, I don't know. I'm not heavily business oriented. I'm not a business person.
Work counts.
But work stuff.
Yeah, work counts.
I want to win an annual award. I want to be within my space. I want to be like the company grade officer of the year. That's the goal.
Okay.
And I'm gonna work my ass off to get it.
Hell yeah.
And then family goals: spend more time with family. It's just simple as that. I need to spend more time with family. Spend more time with my daughter. Spend more time with my wife. And one more thing: we need a vacation again. This is our first family vacation. It was okay. We need to do better though. We need to do better. We need to see more family because this pandemic, man, you're stuck in your little bubble. And my daughter's, she's used to seeing people, but she needs to see more people and be more socially interactive. So, yeah, that's it.
I love it.
Yeah, man.
I love it. Dude, yeah. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find my Instagram, sir.covington is on Instagram. My Twitter is at whoisdeante. It's private, but that's okay. I like to keep it that way. I have another podcast, me and some friends that I went to college with. It's called Loudest Podcast. Find us anywhere. Spotify, Apple Music, things of that nature. So, yeah, man. that's all we have to promote. Nothing else.
Hell yeah.
But I'm just me.
I appreciate you being here.
Oh, it's great. I'm so happy I was able to swing by because it wouldn't have been virtual, and I don't know if it would have been as great. You know
wouldn't have been the same. Wouldn't have been the same. I think we had a great conversation. I hope nobody necessarily takes anything out of context. Like, we're primarily thinking out loud.
Yeah.
It's primarily what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I hope nobody takes anything out of context or anything.
I hope not, because I mean, I think this is a normal conversation, and I don't think that. I don't know. If anyone wanted to break our conversation out in the clips, I don't know how you could take it out of context. You know what I mean? And if anyone did, I can explain everything that we talked about. You know, Good. I have no fear about it.
Yeah, because I mean, there's nothing. Yeah, I mean, I just. No, I think it was a good conversation. I enjoyed it. Yeah, Thanks so much.
Good talk, man.
Absolutely.
Good shit.
Yes, sir.
All right, man.
Boom. See you next time, guys.